Hey everybody, Ezra Levant here. It's 6:42 Eastern Time. Sorry for the slight delay in going live. I don't know what was going on. We had a bit of a YouTube snafu hiccup. There were a couple hundred people waiting patiently on the other link. I hope they can find their way over. Maybe we can just put some comments in the chat line in that YouTube to get them over to this YouTube. So apologies all around. We still have 18 minutes to go though before the official debate kicks off. However, it's not really much of a debate anymore. I was really looking forward to it. I still am. It's the debut event for the new independent press gallery that Candace Malcolm has founded. And last time I spoke to Candace, there were 50 journalists who have signed up for her independent press gallery. I didn't know there were 50 independent journalists in Canada. I mean, we got some here at Rebel News, and there's a few others. Spencer Fernando, The Breaker, National Telegraph, Post Millennial, True North, obviously, which is where Candace herself is from. But I'm getting to the end of my list pretty quick. 50. In fact, I went down to the Sheraton in downtown Toronto, which is where the debate, Fireside Chat, is happening. I went down there just to say hi, check it out. We got a ton of our people there. It looked amazing. And I met other guys and gals from other media. In fact, I got a business card here from guys. Diverge Media is one. I'd never heard of them before. I haven't had a chance to check them out. But how much fun is that? To meet people who have independent news media who I had never heard of. And more power to them. So there were two guys there from Diverge. I can't say I endorse them or promote them in any way. I had not heard of them till today. But boy, they were friendly, and it was sure great to meet some other independent media who I just never met before. And congratulations to Candace and Andrew Lawton, who are hosting it. I want to tell you about a little wrinkle before we get into the event. We still got about 15 minutes for that. All four candidates who are running for the Conservative Party leader are SVP that they were coming, so I was pretty excited about it. Of course, those candidates, you know who they are. Leslyn Lewis, we've talked to her a few times. Erin O'Toole, Derek Sloan, and Peter MacKay. As you may know, a couple of other Conservative leadership candidates were disqualified by party executives. Jim Karahalios is one, and Mr. DeCarey from Quebec is another. But then, today, Leslyn Lewis put out a press release saying she's sick, and the doctors have ordered her not to participate. Well, I take that at face value. I'm sorry to hear it. I think she was invited to participate via Skype or Zoom or something like that, and she simply declined, which I'm not thrilled about. Are you really so sick that you can't participate even by Zoom or Skype? I'm a little skeptical, but you know, that is what it is. Incredibly, though, shortly after Leslyn Lewis said, I'm sick, doctor says I can't come, well, let me read to you a press release put out by Peter MacKay. And Justin, if you want to try and find it out there and put it on the screen, I'll read along. Just unbelievable. I got to say, the word cowardice, it's pretty embarrassing what I'm about to read to you. This is a press release by Peter MacKay. I spoke with Leslyn Lewis and was sorry to hear that she could not participate in the leadership debate hosted by the Independent Press Gallery tonight. I have great respect for Dr. Lewis and the positive and constructive campaign she has run. That's why I propose that this debate be rescheduled. To be fair to all, I will not participate in a debate where she is not present. Well, hang on a second, you little liar. You did not participate in the last debate in which she was present. There was a debate. In fact, we live streamed it a few weeks ago. It was from the Vancouver Centre, I think, Conservative Association. She was there. Out of respect for her, you didn't attend. What a weird little cowardly lion. I was preparing for the debate when I learned that Dr. Lewis could not participate. I was looking forward to taking part in tonight's debate to articulate my positive vision for the future of the Conservative Party, and because of the role in the Independent Press Gallery is taking in promoting free and fair speech. I don't know what fair speech is. I know what free speech is. Out of respect for Dr. Lewis and Conservative Party members, I proposed to the Independent Press Gallery that the debate be rescheduled at the earliest possible alternative and in a virtual format. who the hell are you? A virtual form, I know why. Because he doesn't want to be scrummed by reporters. Out of respect for Leslie Lewis, I'm boycotting the event. You weirdo. You cowardly weirdo. Oh my God, he gets worse all the time. Hopefully, the Independent Press Gallery will be able to reschedule the debate. Yeah, because sure, why not? On 2 hours' notice to shut down an entire event where people have come in from all around the country to participate. You pompous little prat. But in the interim, party members can access the debates hosted by the Conservative Party of Canada at this website. Hang on, you little weirdo. You're telling people to go and watch another debate. You're linking to another debate, but you have tremendous respect for this debate. So you won't link to this debate that you are cowardly avoiding. You deeply respect everyone involved in this debate, not quite deeply enough to even link to it. Peter MacKay is perhaps, who thinks he's a winner, I don't know, maybe he is. I think he would leave the Conservative Party of Canada to its worst result since Kim Campbell. I think he is as dumb as Kim Campbell, as vain as Kim Campbell, as clueless about policy as Kim Campbell, and has as bad instincts as Kim Campbell. But there's one more addition to that. He despises the party grassroots, I guess sort of like Kim Campbell did. My only explanation is that Peter MacKay thinks he's absolutely got this in the bag. And so by not attending, he's avoiding the risk of being asked real questions, which he probably would be. If Andrew Lawton and Candice Malcolm are chairing it, they'd probably ask real questions. And Peter the Cowardly Lion is not up for that. He must think he has this thing so much in the bag that there is no point in risking it by attending. I can assure you that if my read of the room is right, ordinary grassroots Canadians, especially the blue side of the Conservative spectrum, are increasingly disenchanted with Peter MacKay and his high-handed approach to things and his general cluelessness. I think if he really is ahead in the polls, and if he does, the polls mean nothing. If he's ahead in the arcane method by which the Conservative Party chooses its leader, if he does win, I think he will leave behind huge pockets of Conservatives who just say, yeah, I'm not going out to support Liberal light. We already have one dumb jock named Justin Trudeau. We don't need another named Peter MacKay. I could be wrong on all these things. I could be wrong. But I think he really is Kim Campbell version 2. Now I hear in my ear that we have our friend Cian Bexley ready to roll from the location of the downtown Sheraton. And I should tell you that we'll listen to the fireside chats, but we have all 5 Rebel journalists, do we have 5, maybe even more, on the scene at the Sheraton. David Menzies, Sheila Gunn-Reid, Cian Bexley, our newest reporter, Drea Humphrey from BC, and Andrew Chapados. So we've got 5 journalists down there. I'm here at the headquarters holding the fort. Let's say hello to Cian, who I think is on the line. Cian, are you there? Hey, Cian, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Ezra?
I'm fine. I was down there earlier, saw you today. Looks like a good turnout. I had to leave to get back up here on time. Can you set the scene for me? When I was down there last, it was filling up, and I was meeting all sorts of new journalists I had never even met before. I have to say, Cian, what's exciting for me tonight is the Independent Press Gallery itself. Yeah, the debate will be interesting, but frankly, I don't think we're going to hear anything particularly new. And Peter MacKay, the Cowardly Lion, runaway, whatever. But for me, the big news tonight is that the Independent Press Gallery itself is so strong, so well organized, and I'm meeting new independent journalists.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And, you know, I might even say that this debate and where it's been set up and how it's been set up, it looks better and it feels better than even the official Conservative Party debate that was hosted that welcomed, you know, the CBC and Global News and CTV. This was put together very nicely. All of the chairs were separated following the rules that the oppressive regime here in Ontario and Toronto have put on people. But, you know, in the official one, reporters weren't even allowed in the room. They had to go in one at a time. Here, it's more open access, and it was really exciting to see independent journalists from across Canada who have an completely different audience than the CBC does and Global News does, to finally have access to some of these important folks who are running to replace Andrew Scheer. Unfortunately, Leslyn Lewis, as you said earlier, ducked out because of a health issue, and Peter MacKay, in solidarity with the earache and fever, said no, he's not going to come and answer any tough questions or have to speak with the riffraff who are running against him, like Erin O'Toole and Derek Sloan. I think that's kind of a move that someone who thinks that they're in the lead would make, but I don't know if that's so true anymore. I wouldn't say that Leslyn Lewis missing out on this debate is going to hurt her chances at all. I think that she's actually, and some articles actually came out in the CBC showing that she might even be in second place already if she's not in a close third to Erin O'Toole. So I think that we're set up for a great evening tonight, even without Peter MacKay here. I think that it's going to be, just getting the camera fixed a little bit here. I think that even without Peter MacKay, even without Leslyn Lewis, it's going to be a good evening.
Yeah, listen, I'm looking forward to it. Andrew Lawton as the MC will be great. Of course, he's a frequent guest on our shows. He's a great talker. He used to have a big talk show in London, Ontario. He's even traveled with me to the United Kingdom a couple of times to cover the case of Tommy Robinson, so we know he loves freedom of speech. I'm excited for him, and I'm excited for Candace Malcolm. Like I say, Kian, the fact that the Independent Press Gallery is doing things is very exciting because we need an alternative to the Trudeau bailout media press gallery. Give me just one word, because we only have I guess we got 7 minutes before things start. I met some new media in there. I mentioned one group called Diverge Media. Tell me some of the folks, were there new folks there that you hadn't heard of before? We had a big rebel contingent there. Tell me, I mean, I had to leave it around, about an hour ago to get back up here. Who else is there, and what's the mood in the room? So forget Peter MacKay for a minute, forget the candidates. Just give me a read on the journalists there. Are independent journalists sort of excited to have their own forum now?
Yeah, certainly. As you mentioned, the largest contingent here is Rebel News. We have 3 cameramen here and 5 reporters. We pull out all the stops to be here because we don't get opportunities like this often. But on top of us being here, there is Breitbart. There's
Breitbart is there. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it is very cool to be able to rub shoulders with these folks in the industry who are equally pushed away from important places like this. If this was a Canadian press gallery, parliamentary press gallery event, Breitbart would not be here, Rebel News would not be here, and all these people who have have their feelers to different viewers across the country, people who never watch the CBC, who never watch Global News. Well, it's great to be able to have access to those audiences and those voices who speak to so many people.
Key, we've lost the video feed from you, so I'm going to let our team work to get that back up because I want to see them. And if there's other rebels in the room that want to come by and say hi, they're welcome all the time. Now, I know in about 5 minutes' time, I'm just looking at the clock here, we'll sort of hunker down and be quiet as we watch the interviews together. So I'm going to try not to interject because I want to hear both Andrew Lawton and the 2 candidates he talks to. But I think the exciting part will be the scrums afterward, and I think that's the real reason that Peter MacKay evaded tonight's event. And you can even see that in his lame dog ate my homework letter, where he says, yeah, I totally told the Independent Press Gallery that I totally respect them, but I'm just never coming back to an event where I have to answer questions in person. I want to do it by video. He is such a cowardly lion. I want to say one quick thing about Super Chats, because I see some Super Chats popping up. For those of you who haven't been on our Super Chat before, that's basically to the right of the screen there. You see a rolling chat, and you can make your chat super by chipping in a few bucks. That makes it stand out in bright highlights. Everyone sees it, including me. I do my best to read them all. And it's important because we get 70% of the revenues therefrom, which helps us because we don't get any money from Justin Trudeau, unlike the mainstream media. El Chepacabra is back with $35, and all I see from him is the letter M, which I take it is some sort of James Bond-like code. Sean A8 has £10. He says, do you trust the USA and China going forward? New beginnings. Is Kanzuk, if it happens, something that will possibly change the future economically and other for nations involved? I honestly hadn't heard much about Kanzuk, New Zealand I think the A is Australia there, and UK. I hadn't heard much of it before this leadership race. I know that Erin O'Toole has talked about it, and perhaps some others. Listen, I'm a fan of the Anglo-sphere. Frankly, I think other British Commonwealth countries like India are part of that. I think Taiwan is, it's culturally different, but I think there should be a new realignment for liberal democracies against tyrannies. But yeah, of course I'm a fan of Kanzuk. It's sort of like a Five Eyes. I don't want to break away from the United States, which I think maybe Kanzuk can sort of be interpreted as. Let's read some more Super Chats, and we only have 3 minutes left. Oh, I just hear in my ears that one of the reporters on the scene had a medical problem. Is that what you said, Justin? Oh my God! They had a medical problem on camera. I don't want to embarrass the reporter. I know him, and he was involved in the production, so I hear that might be delaying the event. I wish Sam all the best. He's such a good guy. He's a consummate independent journalist, and I'm very sorry to hear that. But it sounds like things might be delayed due to that. Justin, feel free to reach out to our team on the ground there. He's just working to get their connection. But in the meantime, we got some more Super Chats I'll keep reading. So I want to let you know it appears that the event is delayed because of a medical situation. I'm very sorry to hear about that. Okie doke, let's take a look. Keep pushing the true team. Great job. That's from Sylvain Menard. Thank you so much. I'm proud of our team. But like I say, there are other teams out there that I didn't even know about. So I had to get out of there quick. I would have loved to stick around and schmooze. I'm a bit of a schmoozer sometimes, and I don't get out enough to things like this. But Sheila, Drea, Mocha, Andrew, Kian, so many of our, David Menzies, are down there. We've got to really, because it's fun to be included. I mean, I hate being excluded by the Parliamentary Press Gallery for reasons of legality and civil rights, but it's nice also for just reasons of social camaraderie. So I hope that they collect the business cards and the names of these other groups that are part of the Independent Press Gallery. And I hope Sam's okay. So it sounds like things are going to be delayed just a little bit. Let's read some more Super Chats. Karen Dworkin, $10. Well, Karen, that's very nice of you. I appreciate that. With Super Chats, you don't have to just put in some dough. You can ask some questions or make a comment, and I'll do my best to read them all. Dual Shock, $5. Again, thank you very much. Feel free to ask a question or make a point. Daviator, $5. The Rebel and Derek Sloan are number one. Well, I've enjoyed getting to know Derek Sloan through this process. I don't mean personally, I mean ideologically. I think his answers have been very strong in all the past debates. Did I just hear in my ear that we've got some? No, nothing there. So I am checking another feed right now. I'm checking the True North feed, and we're all, I guess, just waiting for, and this is how it goes. I mean, if you have a medical incident or, here's Andrew on the line. Hey, Andrew, sorry, I thought they meant Andrew Lawton. I thought we were going to hear from Andrew Lawton, the moderator for tonight's event. It's Andrew Chapados, who's a new on-air talent, and he does behind-the-scenes work here too. Andrew, great to see you again. I saw you about an hour ago when I was down there. Can you give me an update on the event? Is it true that Sam, one of the journalists with True North, has had an incident, and that is what the delay is from?
Actually, it's hard to hear you because of the paramedics are talking on their walkie-talkie behind me. So it looks like somebody did suffer some sort of medical incident in, I think, the main showroom there while they were doing a report. So yeah, paramedics and other personnel from the hotel are moving in and out right now behind me, I think.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that. And I hope he's okay. I know this young man, and he's a very conscientious young man. He's a good journalist. Obviously, his welfare comes first. So just for an explanation to our viewers, that is why the event has been delayed. But I imagine that it will resume in 10 minutes or so when things are cleared up. Andrew, I was just talking to Kian a moment ago, and I told him that one of the things I like about tonight, even though you have two candidates bailing out, and now you have this bump in the road of a medical incident, is that this event is happening at all. That the Independent Press Gallery, from what I heard, had 50 members sign up almost immediately, and that even though there's these bumps in the road tonight, they are putting together an event that is of great interest to people nationally and that has targeting a different audience than the Justin journalists. Tell me what you have seen in the room, if you've met any of these other journalists, and what the general feeling is there, other than, of course, this terrible medical situation.
Well, it looks really nice. The setup, they've done a really good job. The Independent Press Gallery here. Obviously, they were prepared for something a little different. I was told that there was a podium there earlier, and they've had to switch it to the Fireside chat, sans fireplace, it looks like, actually. But it looks like there's going to be a couple seats set up for them to have a discussion with Mr. Andrew Lawton and have a debate there. The energy's pretty good, obviously, besides what you just mentioned. But we're sort of just waiting here for everything to start getting going. Everybody's been really polite. We got a mask up for the most part, it seems, to comply with, even though I'm not wearing one right now, to comply with the hotel here. But everything's been good. Everyone's been super friendly. And like you said, they're trying to reach out to a different audience here, which is why I thought it was a good move for Peter MacKay to show up to this. But it seems that at the drop of a hat, whatever excuse he could take, I guess he's taking solidarity with Leslie Lewin's voice, whatever that means. But I thought it would have been interesting to hear him field questions from people like us and from other Independent Press Gallery members who may have less softball questions to ask, so to speak. So I was looking forward to that, but hopefully we'll still get some good questions and good banter going on some of the topics that he might not ever get addressed at the other debates from other journalists.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's exactly why Peter MacKay is not there, because he doesn't want questions from the likes of you and Cian and Sheila and David and Drea. I think it couldn't be more transparent. Did you meet any other journalists there? I was just saying to the viewers, I met a couple of young lads who were with something called Diverge Media. I'd never heard of them before. I had to, oh my goodness, there we go. I hope Sam's okay. Have you met any other journalists in particular? Are there any news organizations that you only just discovered today that you didn't know about before?
None that I haven't discovered yet, but I have met a couple of the True North people, and I think they're a pretty respectable organization. I've been reading them. They kind of go along. I don't know if it's the same path. Nobody treads the same path as us, Ezra.
It's too dangerous a path, Andrew. I warn people off it. Tread your own path, I say. This is for a hardy few. Save yourself, I say.
Yeah, for sure. I'm digging my own path here as we speak. But yeah, everybody I've met have been nice. I didn't ask what particular organization some people were from. I did meet some new people who told me I had to put on my mask, so that's always interesting. And I know that, I don't know if you mentioned Drea Humphrey, our new rebel recently, but she's been a hit so far. She's been chatting up with a lot of people, so maybe we can get her on and ask her all the new fresh faces that she's met as well as a fresh face. Follow her on Instagram, also everybody. She just made an Instagram, the Drea Humphrey.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, listen, Andrew, thanks for giving us the update and for explaining. And we saw behind you the wheeled gurney go out to the ambulance. So I know the character who was in there, and I am somewhat distraught by this news, but obviously he is in the best hands right now. I can imagine after some rearrangement, things will get underway from the inside. So we'll stand by to pick up that live feed. And I've been monitoring. I just hear that Candace Malcolm has advised that the event will be starting soon. So Andrew, we'll let you go back in. And if there are any breaks or things like that, feel free to come out. Send out our friend Sheila Gunn-Reid, Cian. We already spoke to Cian, but we're happy to talk to him again. David Menzies, Drea Humphrey. It's nice to see you down there. And we'll let you go back in. I'll read some more super chats. And as soon as Candace formally introduces the evening, I'll cork it and we'll just play that feed. So that's the plan for tonight. Thanks very much, Andrew.
All right, thanks a lot, Ezra. More super chats. We got more reporters coming. We'll answer your questions.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's a good point. Well, he loves super chats, and of course, he has his own YouTube page called Andrew Says. So, I just hear in my ear that he will be on the live stream tomorrow at noon, which makes sense because our Sheila Gunn-Reid, who is normally doing it Tuesdays and Thursdays, she'll be flying home to Edmonton from her trip out here. Some more super chats. Andrew Kozak, $5. How many more scandals do you think Trudeau has up his sleeve? Or will this current one sing him out? This current one will not sink him. So who will be the scapegoat? Well, in the past it was Jody Wilson-Raybould. I think the Kielburgers are going down. Everyone's abandoning them. They're the perfect sacrificial lamb for Trudeau. So they'll take the scapegoating. Not Trudeau himself. Wolfcat, Wildcat, $15. What are we going to do with our Conservative Party? Not sure we can trust them. Listen, I don't want to be a downer, and I know I'm so sad and morose about things. So try and be optimistic. I don't know. Let's find some silver lining out there. I just know it means a lot more work for us and the other independent journalists who are of a conservative flavor to keep the conversations going that are skeptical and that aren't paid off. What bothers me the most about the era we are in now is that the other voices in the media are being rented by Justin Trudeau and his media bailout. So how can you even have an honest conversation when they're like getting $100 bills stuffed into their, I hear in my ear that it's starting, so I'm going to be quiet now. I will answer every single super chat later on, but for now, let's be quiet and listen to the
Lewis
event.
and her campaign team informed us that she had to withdraw from tonight's event because a doctor has ordered her to stay at home and get some rest. We've been in touch with her campaign, and we wish her a speedy recovery. Now, upon hearing the news of Lewis dropping out, Peter MacKay's campaign informed us that he too would no longer be participating. He lives in Toronto. He's here in Toronto right now, but he chose to abandon tonight's debate, and instead, at 3 p.m. on the day of the event, he urged us to postpone the entire thing. Look, anyone who's ever organized an event like this knows that postponing something like this is just not possible. The hotel ballroom had already been rented, the technical crew was here and had already set up, and journalists had already flown in from all over the country to cover this event. We're not the CBC. We don't have billions of dollars to waste just to do this all again next week. And besides, Conservative Party members already have their ballots with them at home, and the deadline to mail those in is fast approaching. Realistically, tonight is the last opportunity to host a leadership event, and so the show must go on. Instead of a debate, tonight's moderator, Andrew Lawton, will instead be hosting back-to-back fireside chats with the remaining two candidates, first with Erin O'Toole and then with Derek Sloan. Afterwards, there will still be a media scrum with the journalists who are here in attendance. Leadership is about resiliency, courage, and trust. And voters can judge for themselves what they think of Peter MacKay's last-minute decision to renege on his commitment and abandon this event. Regardless, tonight is a special night where we hope to showcase the value of independent journalism in providing a platform to get to the real issues at the heart of the Conservative leadership race. We've consulted with dozens of journalists, and we've heard from hundreds of grassroots party members from every region across the country, every demographic, to craft the most interesting and important questions possible. Well, of course, we would have preferred to have a debate, and there's no doubt that we're disappointed with the way things have gone. We had to adapt, and we're still putting forth the tough questions that are important to Conservative members and not the irrelevant issues obsessed upon by the mainstream media. I'd like to say thank you so much to the two remaining candidates, Mr. Erin O'Toole and Mr. Derek Sloan. Thank you so much for participating in our event, and a special thanks to you, the viewers at home, for supporting independent journalism in this country. And so, without further delay, I will now turn it over to my True North colleague, Andrew Lawton, to begin the formal program tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Candace, and thank you to all of you who are tuning in. If you caught the pre-show for this debate, you are no doubt aware that we had a medical issue that arose with a very valued member of our team, Sam Eskenazi. I want to let you all know that he is fine, he's alert, and actually himself was very encouraging to continue on with the show. Thanks to all of you who have sent in messages of support. As Candace mentioned, we aren't doing the event that we thought we were even a few hours ago, but it's still a very critical opportunity to hear from the people individual vying not only to lead the Conservative Party of Canada, but also the country. We did a coin toss for order, and I'm very grateful to have with us the first of our two Fireside Chat Conservative leadership candidates, Derek Sloan. Please welcome Derek Sloan out. Derek, thank you very much for being here. It's good to see you. So obviously the event that you had anticipated being here tonight is a bit different. So we thank you very much for still being here in spite of all the changes. One of the reasons that the Independent Press Gallery was formed was to advocate for independent journalists to have a voice in this country. And I wanted to start off right there with you. Where do you see the big challenges being for press freedom and for freedom of speech?
Well, hey, that's a really good question, and I've been a very strong candidate on those issues, and I think that the Conservative Party has to lead from the federal level on free speech. And I've been very clear that bills like Bill C-16, which can compel you to use certain gender pronouns, for example, should be repealed. We can't have bills like that from the federal level when we claim to believe in free speech. So we need to be very clear on issues like that. When it comes to the press freedom and the inherent bias that's in certain media groups, I think it's great that we're seeing groups that have started recently or not so recently that are holding their own against organizations like the CBC that get tons of funding. And I'm glad to be here. I think that I've set a trend that says do not ignore conservative media, and that has been, some people in the Conservative Party don't speak to certain groups, and I've been very clear to speak to all kinds of groups, whether it's Rebel News or groups like yourself, and I've set a standard for other candidates as well. So I'm pleased to be here. On the topic of free speech, we have to do everything we can to defend it. And I spoke about Bill C-16. There's also social media banning. And I've been the only candidate, to my knowledge, that's spoken about taking on the shadow banning and the censorship that we're seeing. And whether that's during elections, we've seen examples of Facebook blocking statements critical of Jagmeet Singh or critical of open borders. We need to take these guys head on. If they're going to claim to be a neutral platform, then they need to act like a neutral platform. And this is where free speech is at right now. We're talking about university campuses, and I've been clear that universities need to be objectively in favor of free speech to receive federal funding. And we need to be sure that we're pushing for federal funding on the cutting edge, and that means social media. That means it's something simple we can do is to criminalize doxing. And I was speaking with a couple of young conservatives in Montreal just last week, who I met with them at their apartment, and I said, "Hey, you guys want to have a picture together?" And they said, "Well, we'd love to, but that might identify where we live." And one of them had already been doxed by Antifa, believe it or not, who again, I've said should be declared a terrorist organization, but they had been doxed. And in this country, that's not a criminal offense. You can sue people civilly, but it's challenging. Other countries have made that a criminal offense. And I believe if you are trying to release details of where someone lives or details about where their kids go to school or go to daycare for the intent of having other people cause you trouble, that should be a criminal offense. So I think we need to hit this head on.
When you talk about, on one hand, though, wanting to push for more free speech on social media platforms, there are those that would, and let's take people's children out of the equation, there are those that would say doxing is a logical extension of online free speech.
Well, I think when the intent of sharing your address and your location with a group of people who the intent is to cause you problems. The intent is, hey, Andrew, if you have this opinion, I'm going to tell my followers here where you live, where your kids go to school. This isn't about arguing political opinions. This is with the intent of people with bad intent showing up at your home. Basically, the intent is to shut you up. The intent is to scare you into not sharing your opinion.
But legislating intent, isn't that the backbone? A lot of these other areas of law, like human rights code, speech laws, other things that conservatives are typically against, when you start to get into the thought behind an act as fundamentally changing the nature of the act itself.
Well, I mean, criminal law is filled with intent, right? You have mens rea, and you have most criminal laws have to do with intent, not all of them. So I believe it's perfectly fine to target a behavior which has basically malice as its intent. So, the typical attack on free speech is, I don't like your opinion. Your opinion is violent. But if you are, for instance, free speech doesn't cover me threatening you. Mm-hmm. It doesn't cover me asking someone to assault you. And doxing is basically in that category. So if you're doxing someone, if you're putting out someone's intimate details of what they do and where they go, this has nothing to do with furthering public discourse. This has to do with targeting you and trying to silence you. And so to me, I think that's a legitimate distinction. And
on the regulation of social media companies, I guess there are two aspects to this. Number one is the effectiveness when these companies are such a size that they have the GDP of many countries, and most of them are not domiciled or headquartered in Canada. So how do you enforce a Canadian law on these companies without being like China, which is, restricting access? And the other part is the fundamental nature of, is it not challenging their right as a private company to operate the way they want, even if that means we don't think conservative speech is as valuable as liberal speech or something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question, and I'm not here to tell you the answer is easy. There's obviously different parts of this that would play into provincial jurisdiction. So the point is that we need to identify that it's a problem, and that's probably the most important thing. But listen, I believe that organizations need to follow the law in Canada, and there's all kinds of things that businesses can and can't do. And I believe that social media companies, which again enjoy the benefits of, they are not subject to being sued for example, libel or things of that nature. So at the same time, a publishing organization like a newspaper can be. So if they're claiming the benefit of sort of a neutral platform and for everybody to use for whatever the reason, they can at the same time edit comments, without any rationale. They can't be, removing certain comments unless it accords with a very open standard of conduct. And we all know that the codes of conduct on these things are really, in many cases, unintelligible. So
really what you're describing there cuts to what we've seen a lot of as of late, which is cancel culture and this idea that conservatives have expressed, which is that their voices are not valued by the elites. And we see that in social media companies. You see it in the mainstream media. You've experienced yourself a fair bit of pushback from the mainstream media, not just on social conservative issues, which I suspect we'll get to later on in this discussion, but even your approach to some issues that have been very pertinent throughout the coronavirus pandemic, such as wanting Theresa Tam, the public health officer of Canada, fired. We know from the last election, from all of Stephen Harper's elections, conservatives are not dealt a fair hand by the mainstream media. And I think that on the cultural side, we can talk about media bias and all of these things. But if you're within those parameters, you're operating as a figure in Canadian politics, the treatments the media is going to give you is not going to be good. How do you push back against that when you are, as you note, a conservative without apology, a hardliner on a lot of social and economic issues?
Well, I mean, the simple answer is you don't jump through their hoops. And so there's been, we get a lot of requests from mainstream media that we just ignore. And it has nothing to do with, it has nothing to do with those organizations, but it has to do with the fight that we're in. And right now, our fight is to win this leadership battle. So there's some candidates who bask in the glory of, sitting down with CBC and all this stuff. If I don't think that sitting down with a particular media outlet is going to help me reach conservative members, I don't even bother going on. So part of it is just not jumping through the hoops that the media has. And in a general election, obviously, the strategy is different. But the other thing, too, we have to remember is that we have access to social media, and we can drive our narrative through controversy or not using social media. So I think that my experience anyways is that there's some conservatives who feel that they've done a good day's work when the media isn't slamming them. And to me, I say, listen, if the media isn't slamming you, maybe you're not doing a good day's work. If you're going to stand on conservative principles in this day and age, you're going to get kickback. And sometimes we need to be able to stand there and take it and say, you know what, we've said the right thing. We don't need to apologize. We don't need to rephrase what we're trying to say. and let the media do what they want. I believe at the end of the day, if we push our message, whether through controversy or not, the Canadian populace will see through it. And I think that, especially with the use of social media, we can get our message through regardless of what the mainstream media says. And I've seen that happen in my campaign.
I think the saying that there's a lot of truth to is that Twitter is not real life. And when you go and knock on doors, most of the people that you encounter, regardless of where it is in Canada, aren't following hashtag CDN Poly on Twitter. They don't know what the Laurentian elite types, the mainstream media, are talking about. A lot of people still know what is on the front page of the paper, what's on their 6 o'clock newscast. And if you've got the mainstream media throwing every name in the book at you, how are you going to expand the base of the conservative movement and the base of the conservative voters if you're the leader?
Well, you know, the point you make about Twitter is correct, but it's incorrect when it comes to Facebook. And we're seeing a massive use of Facebook. I forget the stats. It's 80-90% of like everybody, even like grandmothers, that are on Facebook. So I think that social media can be used to our advantage. When it comes to Twitter, you obviously don't look at your combination of positives versus negatives because it's only, politically engaged people that are there. But I believe that you stick to your narrative and people will eventually come around. And I saw that with some of the comments I made about Dr. Tam. Initially some people thought it was the end of the world, but even to this day, I still get mail at my constituency office from just random people who say, you know what, thanks for speaking out on this issue. You've proven yourself to be correct. So I think that we have to be okay with maybe being a little bit early or stepping out on a limb, and the truth will take care of itself. And I think that the media, as biased as it is, eventually the truth will come out. And I think that we have to count on it.
You had MPs in your own caucus that, after you had called for Theresa Tam to be fired, wanted you kicked out of caucus in the middle of a leadership race. And you can talk about people's motivations for that, whether they may have had an allegiance to another leadership campaign. But still, there have been people that have spoken up that have said they do not see themselves being able to serve under a Derek Sloan-led caucus. And you can say they're wrong. You can say that they're perhaps having a narrow view of it. But even so, if you are a leader, how do you unite that when you've got people that don't even want you to just not win, but don't even want you in the caucus? How do you serve and unify a caucus like that?
Some people think the party is about the caucus. The party is about the members. We all serve at the leisure of the members. If I am given the honor of leading this party, it will be because of the members. And so the caucus, it's up to the caucus to recognize and respect the members who put them there to begin with and elected the leader that they want to lead the party. So I firmly believe that the caucus will fall behind anyone who is elected. But at the end of the day, there is this attitude that it's about the caucus and, we're in Ottawa and we're important. We're not important. It's the people that put us there, and that's why I'm here, and I will never betray them.
You can say that the members put the caucus there, and if you're successful, the members will have put you there, and that is accurate. But even so, leadership is about unifying rather than dividing. So I'm not accusing you of dividing, but you have divided people against you, whether it's by your fault or not. So even if you say the caucus isn't the be-all and end-all, what's your approach going to be as leader with these people? Because you still will have to manage them. Caucus management is still a part of the role of leader of the Conservative Party.
Well, it's interesting because I've been very clear that I believe that votes should be free in caucus. So for people who don't agree with me on certain things, I'm not sitting here saying I want to twist their arm. Their mandate is to do what they feel their constituents elected them to do. So I have no problem with a caucus member voting according to their conscience, even if it's a different conscience than I have. But I do believe that this leadership race is exposing certain fault lines in the party. And, when you move from a place, when you're moving, from A to B or from a good place to a better place, it's never easy. I mean, if it was easy, then everybody would do it. But improving, moving to a place where we can become the dominant political force in this country takes certain risks. It takes stepping on certain toes, and it's an inevitable outcome of being able to win. And so I'm not surprised that this has happened, but I'm not concerned. Everyone loves a winner, and I've experienced this before. People say all kinds of things about you before you win, and then when you win, they're your best friends. So we'll let that sort itself out.
conservative campaigns have historically been about aversion to risk, as you've seen. And I think a focus on, we heard the term throughout the Harper years of boutique tax credits and focus solely on pocketbook issues. I know that you've put forward a vision that deals with economic, fiscal issues, social issues, foreign policy. Do you fundamentally disagree with that idea that when you're asking Canadians to vote for you, to vote for your party, that the economics are where it's at?
Well, okay, so let me put it, so yes, I guess I disagree with all of it, but in a more nuanced way than how you phrased it.
Please, how do you phrase it?
Well, here, so I definitely disagree with running on a platform of boutique tax credits. However you run, it needs to be in a big, bold vision, and not, hey, Andrew, if you put your kid in soccer, I'll save you $200. Like in this last election, we had people literally okay, I'm going to save 25% of my cell phone if I vote Liberal. I'm going to get $100 if I put in green lights or environmentally efficient lights. So it can't be about that. It has to be about values. And I've said, listen, we need to run on a freedom platform. In the BC debate, we saw a poll that was done online from people all over BC, and I feel that they reflect Conservatives across Canada. And they were asked, what's the most important issue to you? And the economy was asked, debt was asked. These are things that they are important. I mean, we see a third of $1 trillion in debt. And yet 60 some odd % of people said free speech. The economy was like 8%, 9%. So does that mean that, Conservatives don't care about the economy? It does not. But the point is that our meta-narrative, I mean, Justin Trudeau does not campaign on the economy. He campaigns on his version of Canadian values, of his version of bringing the country together. He campaigns from the heart, or at least he tries to. And we have to do the same, because that's what Canadians, at the end of the day, Canadians are going to follow someone who campaigns from the heart. And so when we campaign on freedom, all of that impacts the free market. It impacts the economy. It impacts all these things. But we need to have a meta narrative that drives our vision, and freedom is what that needs to be.
On the economics, because we can't get through a Conservative leadership fireside chat without talking about those, anyone who inherits the premiership of Canada, if they win an election after winning leadership, is going to have a very challenging economic situation to deal with, a deficit nearing $350 billion, debt that continues to go up. How do you deliver that Conservative vision that you want, which is tax cuts, lower regulations, less government spending, when that's the mess you'll have? What's the budget that you'll put forward, or the economic platform that you'll be putting forward?
Well, we have to do all that, and we have to drive the narrative. So, the idea that
I'm not asking about the narrative, though. I'm asking about the numbers.
Well, so we have to put forward a budget that cuts federal spending. Period, right? But when it comes to the economy as well, we have to look at growth as much as we have to look at cutting. So getting our energy sector back on track is a major way of doing that. I mean, every job in the oil field impacts many other jobs in Ontario and elsewhere, whether it be manufacturing or banking or even legal work. So the energy sector is a big thing. We have to look at real tax cuts. We have to look at promoting made in Canada, small business here in Canada. And I have some good ideas of how to deal with that as well. But, to do all these things, we have to put Canada's sovereignty first. And I don't believe that we can get a recovery in the energy sector without getting out of the Paris Agreement. And I think it's very clear that we recognize as Conservatives, we shouldn't be in these agreements that don't do us any good and hurt our own industries. So we do have to do that. But there's also regulations that need to be cut. We need to do what we would have liked to do anyways, but now we have a real reason to do it with this debt that we have. And we need to be very focused and brave in how we do that.
On regulations, your platform calls for a significant reduction in regulations. You talk about not just looking at federal ones, but even using federal authority to reduce provincial and municipal regulations. Now, I'm all for getting rid of regulations, but how on earth do you justify being a Conservative that respects other levels of government if you're wanting to start cutting their own regulations of those other levels of government?
Well, again, I don't think we would literally be doing it for them, but we need to get into a culture in Canada where we
Sorry to interrupt. Your platform says you would use federal authority to reduce regulations at all three levels of government. What does that mean?
Well, again, what we have to do when we're discussing regulations is we need to make sure, and I think that we're in a good place right now with the premiers of the provinces to offer them certain things from the federal government in exchange for compliance with reducing regulatory oversight. And I think that if the federal government champions a move like this, I think that we can get buy-in. And I don't like to, I'm a carrot type of guy as opposed to a stick type of guy. And I think that it's in our best interest to have the best economy we can have. And I think that we can work with provinces and municipalities. I mean, as someone who has 19 municipalities in his riding, along with a reserve as well, there is all kinds of infrastructure funding that comes from the feds. So again, there's all kinds of ways that we can work with our municipalities, work with their provincial partners to encourage this type of streamlining.
And you've pushed, I believe, for 2 in and 1 out on regulations, right? Where for every one that comes in, you're going to get rid of 2. What are the specific regulations that you see as being disruptive to business? The specific ones that if you're in there as Prime Minister, theoretically, after winning the leadership, have to go?
Well, listen, I'll give you a couple of examples and maybe we'll just use those as examples. So I think we can, when it comes to paperwork for small businesses, we can put all of that into one portal. So, and hopefully we could even combine federal and provincial paperwork as well into one portal. So that would be one example of something we can do. I've also said, and this again would be to work in conjunction with provinces, we need to look at ways to be more innovative in our funding. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, which again is something that's very important to an innovation to growing our economy, we need to look at more sophisticated ways of allowing small startups to get money. And often the securities regulations that we have butt up against things like crowdfunding and things like that. So we need to work with our provincial partners to make it easier to get funding to small business ideas, because the Business Development Bank of Canada, these things, they're not geared for the small startup funding that we need, and we lose a lot of these ideas to the states where the capital markets are more developed. So we need to be a little more creative on these types of things.
And when you talk about funding, you're not talking about government funding. You're talking about even accessing private sector funding.
So crowdfunding by people so crowdfunding is a great way to get quote unquote investment for your business. But the way it's set up right now, there's no way to really offer an equity stake in your business unless you go through the rigmarole of securities laws, which requires more money and expertise than a lot of small people would want to do. But it is a great way in a small town or with the environment we have with the internet right now to find people online who like what you're doing. Maybe you're starting some sort of a craft company. They could invest in your business. And again, this is something that would need to be done in conjunction with the provinces. But I'm saying there are ways to make, for example, crowdfunding more accessible to Canadians to allow them to get businesses off the ground.
You mentioned earlier about Made in Canada, which is a part of your platform as well, pushing for labeling and identification of products that are made here. Certainly throughout the pandemic, I think we've seen the risks of having such a reliance on other countries for supply, and recent cases on personal protective equipment. But even so, we are a country that is based on free trade. The Conservative government in particular inked numerous trade agreements with countries all around the world. We had recently the renegotiation of NAFTA, which is now the USMCA, I think, or the CMUSA. They changed the letters around. But when you come out and say we need to make a push for Made in Canada, are you talking about protectionism, or are you just talking about promoting that culture of homegrown goods? Yeah,
so I think it's about promoting the culture. And I mean, there's all kinds of ways in which free trade doesn't even happen within Canada, between the provinces.
That's true.
So, I mean, there's a great place to start. But I do believe that, and a key to this, of course, is reasonable energy prices. And we saw with the Green Energy Act, with Kathleen Wynne, our electricity prices increased by about 70%, driving all kinds of manufacturing business out of the province. And they're trying to do that again, by the way. Jerry Butts is in a new organization that's suggesting $50 billion for resilient recovery. Well, God help us if that's the type of recovery that we have. But in any event, with affordable energy, which is fossil fuels, and not subsidizing green energy, which is what we had done before, we can get to the place where we can reduce costs for manufacturing, reducing Regulatory overload, again, is another thing. Still, at the end of the day, we won't be competing directly on a cost basis, but I believe we can compete on a quality basis. And we've seen that happen with success in places like Germany. And I believe a lot of Canadians just want to know. I mean, I hear all the time, hey, I wanted to buy something made in Canada. I couldn't even find it, but I think if we do in different provinces, Alberta has their own system. I don't care if it's a provincial or a federal one, but we need to let people know where products come from. I think Canadians are primed to buy made in Canada just by virtue of wanting to, and we need to give them the option to do that.
So under your ideal scenario, would there be a rollback of some of the agreements that have made it possible to freely trade in goods from everywhere and imaginable around the world?
Well, we need to evaluate all the agreements that we have. I'm certainly not against free trade. When we're trading with countries like China, I don't call that free trade. I mean, we have a country there that's devaluing their currency. They're using predatory pricing tactics. They're often trying to steal intellectual property. So we have to be very careful that we're not opening ourselves up to theft. So I believe in trading with countries that want to trade with us and want to play fair. And I don't care where they are. They could be in any part of the world. But we also have to be safe when we're dealing with countries that are acting in a predatory nature.
Let's talk about national unity here, which is a big problem, not just from Quebec, which has always had its troubles with the Canadian Confederation experience, also Alberta, Saskatchewan, parts of British Columbia, people who feel that the West is not a part of Confederation anymore, people who completely want to separate, or at the very least, people who feel like they're getting a raw deal. I know you have said you are a federalist, you don't want to entertain Alberta separation, but you will still, as a Conservative leader, and if your plan works according to how you want it to as Prime Minister, the growing discontent and discord with the West and with Quebec as well. So what's your vision to keep Canada together?
Well, you and I were at an event where a lot of people in the room, this was in Calgary, are on the separatist track. And, I spoke to them and they seemed to like what I had to say. I don't know if everyone is not a separatist now, probably not. But, it starts with recognizing that, repealing Bill C-69 and C-48 is not enough to quell Western separatist sentiment. It's much more than that. These are feelings and issues that go back decades, if not generations. And I think recognizing that is a very important part. I hope Alberta, like other provinces, bargains hard. I hope that the leadership of any province puts their own province first, obviously with a mind to Confederation, but I hope that Alberta stands for their rights, and I've encouraged them to do that. But I also think that we need to do more than simply repeal a few bills that Justin Trudeau has brought in. We need to look seriously at the way that equalization works. And I'm not here to tell you the exact way that should be done, but we have to make sure that we have something in place that Alberta feels is fair. We have to, on the very base of it, we have to make sure that the representation in the House of Commons is adjusted quickly enough to accord to the changing population levels in BC and Alberta. And we know that BC and Alberta are underrepresented in relation to even Ontario and certainly Quebec when it comes to numbers of representatives in the House of Commons. Alberta should have right now probably about 39 or 40 if it was on the same ratio as Ontario, which is about 4 or 5 more than they do now. So these are things that we must look at. We have to put every option on the table. Andrew, I think you and I know that separatist sentiment is so serious right now. I don't think people in the rest of the country get it. I get it. I've been in rooms with hundreds of people who are so serious about this, and people like me out there. I mean, I've had there's many people who say, "Listen, Derek, if you don't win this, I'm out of here." And I think that the number one priority for a Conservative leader, for a Prime Minister, is making sure that every part of the country feels like an equal partner in Confederation. And I don't care what it takes. I'll make sure that happens with Alberta.
One of the big issues that we heard in the 2017 Conservative leadership race, which was odd to become so central, was supply management. And this is an issue where I think Conservatives have often philosophically been at odds with some of the political realities. And I know you have farmers in your riding. I know a lot of farmers, including dairy farmers specifically, make up the Conservative base. What's your stance?
Well, I think that when you look at, so first I'll say I don't have any intentions to make any major changes to supply management. Although we can always look at ways to modify the system. When it comes to dairy, every country has heavy subsidies for their dairy industry. And we have farmers right now that have millions of dollars of property built up into the system. So I don't think that there's any easy way to solve the system. I think that when it comes to food security, when it comes to our farmers, we need to make sure that they're getting the help that they need. I mean, these are industries where, when you have a bad season, you may be wiped out. And it doesn't necessarily fit the immediate constructs that you would see in an economics textbook. That farmer is done. Now, maybe someone else can buy his stuff or whatever, but we need to keep our farmers from going there in the first place. So when it comes to food and when it comes to things like this, I'm okay as conservatives making sure that doesn't happen. So obviously we believe in free trade, we believe in all this type of stuff, but when countries like China are attacking our canola farmers and things like that, we have to step in and defend them. And when it comes to supply management, listen, it's not a perfect system, but again, we live in a marketplace where other countries are basically subsidizing their industries to the same or greater degree, at least in this case. And again, it's not a perfect scenario. The subsidy is not undertaken by the government. It's basically on the consumer. So whoever is purchasing these things is the one that's bearing the cost of it, which again, not perfect, but it is better than a generic subsidy that we all pay for.
How do we as a country then make ourselves competitive when we're, in many cases, engaged in a race to the bottom with other countries that don't have the moral qualms with subsidizing relentlessly, flooding the market, in many cases flooding the market with product that is inadequate? How do you make yourselves competitive in a global marketplace in those circumstances?
Well, again, I think you just can't be afraid to say, listen, if that's what you're going to do, you're not having free access to our market. So again, I don't think, I certainly have no qualms in saying, listen, we will trade with countries that play by the rules. And we're not going to be giving free access to our market to countries that are actively undermining our own economies. So again, I think it's fair, and I'm not afraid to say we can make that distinction.
What would you say has been the most eye-opening experience of this campaign? And I ask that because it's been a very different campaign than everyone thought when they got into the race, more Zoom calls and all of those sorts of things than actual debates. When you came in, did you have a different vision for what you thought you were going to be hearing from people than what you actually did?
Well, there's so much centered around COVID, which obviously nobody expected, and that's very interesting. Obviously, I've seen firsthand the fault lines that have been exposed in the party. Really, I've been surprised. It's so interesting. If we would focus on a few different issues, I think we could easily win in an election. And there's a big concern right now in Canada with certain values issues and Canadian sovereignty issues and civil liberties issues. I don't know if I'm just a unique candidate, but one of the biggest questions I get right now, or I used to get, everyone knows what I think now, is, are you in favor of mandatory COVID vaccines? What do you think of, mandatory masks and things like this? I would have assumed some people would have been concerned about that, but literally the most frequent question I get, it's not about abortion, it's not about anything like that, it's about mandatory vaccinations. So I think these kind of civil liberties issues, Canadian sovereignty issues when it comes to, UN agreements that we've signed on to, and even values issues, these are such important issues, and I don't see many of the other candidates really focusing on that very much.
Do you think there is an opportunity in Canada to push for a bit more of a political approach to appointing judges? This is something that we often hear about in the United States. In Canada, we've seen conservatives be on the losing end of Supreme Court cases on key issues of conscience. Is that something, as a lawyer, as a leadership candidate, that you've taken an eye to?
Well, we have to do everything we can when we're in power to appoint good conservative judges. And when I say conservative, I don't mean, that they vote conservative. I mean that they use conservative principles when they're interpreting the Constitution, when they're interpreting the law. And what we see is judges that take, an activist, I want to impose, my version of, utopia or whatever it is. They don't say this, but they're very activist in terms of their approach. Whereas the conservative, small c conservative approach to judicial application is, well, what does the law say? What has the court said before? Whether I like it or not, how do we apply it? And everyone here, even the average Canadian, thinks that that's how it's done anyways. And you and I know that that's not how it works. But we need to get, people in there, originalists, as it were, to borrow language that's used down south a lot, that, interpret the laws that we have as they're written and stop trying to rewrite things for the benefit of their own political agenda. So really, conservative judges apply the law whether they like it or not. And I think that that's really unpolitical, but unfortunately not what we see typically.
Now, of course, we invited you to participate in a debate, which we didn't get to give you, but we will give you a closing statement if you'd like as we wind things down and give people that final pitch for why they should vote for you as the ballot deadline nears.
Sure. Well, I'm the only candidate that has been so clear on some of those 3 points that I mentioned earlier. I'm dead set against mandatory vaccinations for COVID or anything. I'm against mandatory masks. I'm against the Paris Agreement. I'm the only candidate who's been talking about this. I'm against these other UN agreements that we've signed on to. I've been the only candidate that says we need to defund the World Health Organization. I've been the only candidate that says we need to defund these radical green energy organizations. I've been dead set on being against green energy subsidies, and I will always put Canada first. Everybody knows that I'm upfront, and what you see is what you get, and I will never compromise on our conservative values. Thank you, God bless, and God bless Canada.
Well, thank you very much, Derek Sloan, for coming. I know that 50% of the field didn't, so we appreciate that you did, and we thank you to your team as well for making this happen. We have got to take a quick break here. We'll be back with a little message about the Independent Press Gallery after a short video break, and also with our fireside chat with Erin O'Toole. That's coming up. I'm Andrew Lawton.
That was one of the best interviews I've ever heard of a political candidate. Now, Justin, you stay ready in case I want to show that video on the Independent Press Gallery, because that's actually very exciting. But would you not agree with me that that interview was substantive, firm, but not gotcha questions, and the answers were as good as the questions? I'd say that is probably the best half hour of television that I have seen that is not on Rebel News Network. Did you catch when Derek Sloan called Andrew Ezra for a second? That made me smile. I have to say, I would have liked a debate. That's what I came here today for, and I'm guessing that's what you came here today for too. But first of all, Andrew is such a good communicator. He's so engaging. You can see his talk radio background. That was fascinating. Not a wasted word, no personal indulgences. He pressed Derek Sloan to explain a few things. He smoked him out on a few issues, but never in a gotcha way. Obviously very well prepared. You could see references by Andrew to the official campaign platform of Derek Sloan, and Derek Sloan rose to the occasion. As you know, in past debates, I have said that his messaging... Oh, I hear Andrew's back on. Take a look.
In 2019, my view of that was the back of the Liberal campaign bus. It was quite an ordeal. As many of you who have followed my work with True North may have seen, we were denied access to Justin Trudeau's Liberal campaign events, and then eventually denied access to covering the Leaders Debates Commission's official government-sanctioned, government-hosted English and French language debates with all of the leaders of the major political parties. True North and Rebel News were denied access and had to file an emergency court injunction to have permission to be journalists, permission to cover a government event. Now, if you're familiar enough with the story, you know that we emerged victorious from it. We were granted a court order that required the Leaders Debates Commission accredit us. But even then, the battle has not ended. The Leaders Debates Commission and the federal government have continued to block our attempts for more transparency as the case continues. They continue to say that there was no press freedom case that was at stake. They continue to say that our case is moot because the debate's over, even though there are broader press freedom issues that I think matter, constitutional freedoms. That was in part the spirit that led to the creation of the Independent Press Gallery, a gallery that is not closed off like the Parliamentary Press Gallery, is not limited to people who live in Ottawa and work for mainstream media outlets, but is actually a voice, a vessel, and a vehicle for independent journalists that aren't beholden to the government to do their work. And we were astonished at how controversial this idea seemed when we were going through our ordeal throughout the election, but very grateful as the Independent Press Gallery has launched to see all of the support from established journalists, freelance journalists from all varieties of publications around the country that have stepped forward, and many of whom have actually come from around the country to be in attendance here at this media event, which, as you know, will be followed by scrums with the candidates after. So you can find more information about the organization at independentpressgallery.ca. I hope many of you are on there watching the events we're doing right now, and I thank you very much for that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we've had to change things up a little bit. Instead of the debate that we had initially planned, we're doing sit-down fireside chats with the two leadership candidates that are here. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Conservative leadership candidate Erin O'Toole for a fireside chat here, brought to you by the Independent Press Gallery. Erin, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Yes, we'll do the elbow bump from afar there. Thank you very much for being here. It's truly appreciated.
Well, thanks for doing this. This is a great setup and looking forward to a great chat. I thought you had a good chat with Derek, so ready to go.
When we launched the Independent Press Gallery, one of the things that we saw was a platform item from your campaign that had pushed for not just recognition of the Independent Press Gallery in relation to the Parliamentary Press Gallery, but broadly speaking, increased access to independent journalists at government events. This isn't something that in 2020 you'd think would have to be in a leadership candidate's platform, but it is. So why was it important for you to include that? And why do you think we got to the place where something like that was needed?
Well, for a few years, I've been talking about the decline of free speech rights in Canada and cancel culture and taking down of statues and a range of things. And it's sad to see in a democracy that we would have to have the leadership you guys have shown with the Independent Press Gallery, because Parliament itself means to speak, Parlement. Hansard was published in the original Parliament so that the constituents across Canada could see what was being debated in Parliament. So why would there be sort of a club-like mentality for the press gallery? If you actually look at their sort of guidelines and rules, they don't even seem to anticipate bloggers, podcasters. Obviously, not many Canadians read Hansard anymore, but a lot of them listen to podcasts, read online blogs. Some of the great, insightful, investigative reporting is now done by people who are primarily online and writing for alternative outlets. So we should, in a democracy, welcome as much coverage of the debates of the nation as possible, which is why in my platform, I'm going to give full recognition to the Independent Press Gallery. And really, it's time to shake up a sort of out-of-date club in Ottawa, and that's what I'm going to do as Prime Minister.
You've taken aim throughout your campaign at cancel culture. You've spoken up about free speech. You've been criticized for only really recently adopting this. See, people have said that you're just doing it because that's your niche in the Conservative leadership race. When was it that you first started to actually speak out and pay attention to these issues?
I had watched the decline of debates on university campuses for some time, and even when I would appear on a university campus, there would be criticism from activist groups and almost wanting to suppress other opinions other than their own, cancel culture. When I became very active, Andrew, was when Justin Trudeau took the name of a father of Confederation off a building as a big symbolic act without any debate in Parliament, without any discussion of who Hector Langevin was, one of only two French-Canadian fathers of Confederation who attended all the conferences that led to Canada. He was removed, primarily because he was conservative, by the way, with Sir Georges-Etienne Cartier. And I challenged Trudeau on that. I didn't just complain about it. I also said, you know what? Who opened more residential schools than Mr. Langevin? Your father, Justin. 100 years later, when the program was known to be problematic and to really be destructive. So when I challenge cancel culture and this limitation of free speech, I make sure I go in to win the debates. I make sure I stand up for the things I believe in. And I think Canadians are looking to this. When I had cancel culture and the removal of statues in my launch video in January, many members of the media and some conservatives in other camps mocked me for it. A couple of weeks ago, Andrew, J.K. Rowling, Malcolm Gladwell, 150 authors from around the world said the same thing. This online cancel culture driven by the left is impacting free speech, impacting the principles that basically underscore our democracy. And it's time to stand up for them. I've been doing that. And as leader and prime minister, I will make that a key centerpiece of my leadership.
How do you defend against that when a lot of the things that you might speak out about are the very things that get people canceled, as the term goes? How do you then face the media in an election campaign? How do you avoid getting sucked into that vortex that so many people on the right do and actually get your message out if those are, by your own admission, the stakes of discourse in 2020?
Well, you make sure you know what you're talking about and you make sure you plan. I don't go into debates to lose them. I go in to win. In fact, I joke that my staff didn't want me. I went onto campus 2.5 years ago to debate Sir John A. Macdonald statues, an Indigenous studies class, and my staff said, "We may never see you alive again." But I went. And you know what? I didn't win everyone over, but people heard the other side. You know, that principle of audi alteram partem I learned in law school, hear the other side. What's happening to that in our society? Universities is where that used to be encouraged. Now it's being discouraged. And there were people yelling at me for being there on unceded land and things like this. But there were a group of people that listened. And I actually got positive feedback from the professor who facilitated the debate, who I can tell you from his Twitter feed is not a conservative, but he respected me. We need to bring respect, freedom of speech, and the ability for a conservative principle to be articulated without fear of cancel culture, without fear of ridicule, because that makes our democracy better. Justin Trudeau, you have to have the same view as him on all issues to be a part of his caucus. That's undemocratic. I think our diverse and vibrant conservative movement with free votes, with freedom of speech, that makes our party better because we're truly representative of many views across our country, and that's what a parliamentary democracy should be.
You've said very clearly that you are pro-choice, you're pro-gay rights, yet you are not going so far as to say that everyone in your party has to be pro-choice, that everyone in your caucus has to be. To a lot of people who criticize social conservatives, that is an indistinguishable position from being a social conservative yourself. And we saw this with Andrew Scheer, for example. He was personally pro-life, but had fundamentally the same position as you on the sense that he wasn't going to introduce any legislation. He wasn't going to make any changes to Canadian law on abortion. So how do you fight back against really going down the exact same road that the Conservatives have been down?
Because I've been clear in my political life since I was elected. I often say I'm not a career politician, so I don't have to go back to the 1990s or 15 years ago to put speeches or votes I gave into context. When I left the military, became a lawyer, and then ran for Parliament, I said I'm running to Parliament to defend Canadians' rights. I'm not here to take away any rights granted by the court under the Charter or rights that go back to the Magna Carta. That's why I'm a strong proponent of free speech rights, conscience protections, and I don't like the increasing view on the left that some rights are okay and other rights can be dismissed. In a democracy like us, you have to respect all points of view and be willing to defend all rights. You know, that's what our soldiers have done throughout our history. That's what our parliament is meant to do. That's what Diefenbaker did with the Bill of Rights. We have to defend those rights, whether it's property rights of Canadians that have seen that right removed with an order of council, no debate in the middle of a pandemic for firearms owners, or whether it's a conservative who wants to express a point of view based on their faith. When did religious freedom become a right we're not willing to stand up for in this country? I have concerns about what Justin Trudeau is doing to democratic debates, political party organization, and really Parliament in general, and it fuels me. And what's great, Andrew, Conservatives are a great, passionate, intelligent bunch from coast to coast. We don't have to have the same view on all issues. We have to have respect for one another. And that's why in my launch video, I said unity of the party is key to me. It's why I launched in Alberta to speak to people that are giving up on our country because they're so frustrated with Justin Trudeau. I said, let's make sure that Justin Trudeau does not define Canada. Our democracy defines Canada. Let's defeat him and get our country back on track.
But I'm not sure you really answered the fundamental crux of that question, which is that if your vision of the Conservative Party allows for people who do want to advance on these issues or other issues that come up, how will you as leader deflect against the campaign being sidelined by that, which to a lot of critics was what sidelined the Conservative campaign in 2019, they say. And it may be that you dispute that premise, but you're going to be faced with those same questions. So how will you deal with them?
Well, look, Andrew Scheer is my good friend. I think he realized he had some challenges in the last campaign, squaring off his personal position and his personal views with how he would act as Prime Minister and leader of the party. I do not. People know that I'm a person of faith. I'm Catholic. My family, we believe in faith, and it's an important part of who we are. And as a parliamentarian, I've had to square off the fact that my position on rights and my position as a Conservative doesn't always square with my faith tradition. I have voted consistently in favor of rights, even when I'm just one of 18 Conservatives that voted on an LGBT bill, for example. What was great? Stephen Harper allowed a free vote on that. That's a principle of our party. And I wasn't hurt for being in the minority position. I was promoted twice. Here's the kicker, Andrew. Justin Trudeau skipped that vote to go to a Cash for Access fundraiser with his friends Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne. So they're not going to be able to trot out the age-old hidden agenda campaign with me because I've been clear. And you know what? I'm going to defend free votes, defend free speech as a principle of our party at a time that I think Canadians want to see that. They don't want a cookie-cutter politician who has been a member of the WE board in the Liberal Party. They want real debate, they want accountability, they want ethics, they want leadership, and that's what they will have with Erin O'Toole as Prime Minister.
Throughout the Conservative leadership race, there have been two candidates disqualified, one of them Richard Descaries, another one Jim Karahalios. And the reason I bring those up is because your campaign had actually complained about Jim Karahalios' campaign in the race. A lot of members have reached out to us wondering how you square, on one hand, being against cancel culture and being for free votes, but on the other hand, seemingly supporting a position that denied the members the ultimate right to determine who their leader should be or who their candidates should be.
Well, we have a leadership election committee, the LEOC committee, that decides. We complain because Mr. Karahalios was lying to thousands of Canadians about me, and on issues that I'm very passionate about. You know, when he's sending letters to people in our party suggesting I'm bringing Sharia law to Canada, Andrew, that's a lie, and it's divisive. And more than that, I served in the military. I know people that have died fighting the Taliban. I will do whatever it takes to make sure that law or those cultural practices never come to Canada. They're 180 degrees removed from what we are as a society. So if you want to come and debate tax issues, economic issues, foreign policy, I love that. When you just start sending out stuff that's completely fabricated, I think you have to be held to account. So we have, within the rules, the ability to file that complaint. It was the party that made the decision. And it's disappointing because I do think he probably has some perspective to contribute. But now we've seen this with the Ontario PC party. We've now seen this with the federal party. Let's have a good debate. I win debates. I don't lose them. But you can't lie. You can't divide Canadians. You can't mislead, particularly on something like that. And so we had to correct the record because once people get lists of thousands of people, they can send out whatever they want. Reminds me of the old Churchill quote, "A lie gets around the world before truth gets its pants on." So I had to make sure, for the record, my values as a strong Conservative, particularly on law and order issues, is fundamentally opposed to the elements of Sharia law, and people deserve to know that.
When you mentioned in that response Canadian values, this has become a pivotal part of the discussion about immigration. We know Stephen Harper had a great deal of backlash from the media, to go back to how we started on media bias, for really suggesting that values should be a consideration in immigration. We've seen under Justin Trudeau the problem of illegal immigration balloon. How do you put forward your vision? What is your vision if you're the Conservative leader, if you're the Prime Minister, on immigration?
Well, we have to fix the system. Justin Trudeau allowed the system to become broken. And even worse than that, Andrew, now Canadians' confidence in our system has been undermined. If I go into a Tim Hortons in my riding now, I have people that have serious concerns about our system, about our levels, all these sorts of things that didn't exist 7 years ago when I was elected and Jason Kenney was our minister. We need a fair, compassionate, rules-based system. So when people see 60,000 people walk across the road at Roxham Road, breaking the law, doing that, claiming asylum in an improper way, and nothing being done, and that surge starting after Trudeau's Welcome to Canada tweet, within days, some of our consulates around the world sent notes back to Ottawa saying, look, the Prime Minister's got to clarify this ridiculous example of virtue signaling. That's what he was doing. He's done it many times because they were saying people feel this is a change in our rules in Canada. And so in my riding, I represent a riding in the Greater Toronto Area. The most frustrated people from the whole Roxham Road situation, Andrew, were families waiting longer and longer to sponsor a family member according to the rules. They feel, and I had someone say this to me, should I tell my relative to just go to New York State and walk across the border? What do I say to them? No, of course not. That's not the way it's supposed to work. But Justin Trudeau's incompetence on this file now has some Canadians questioning immigration. We need immigration in this country. In fact, we have a less than replacement birth rate. So if people like CPP and all of our programs, we need to have immigration. It's good for Canada, but it's good when it's fair, compassionate, rules-based. Same with refugees. The private sponsorship route have better outcomes for families on housing, on jobs, on opportunity a year after they're here. The government route has less successful outcomes, so it's unfair to the people that are coming. So let's fix it. I've talked to Jason Kenney, who you know is supporting me quite a bit on these issues. I think we can show Canadians we're going to get back on track. And you know what? Defending your border and actually having people respect the border is a fundamental element of our sovereignty, and it's okay to criticize Trudeau's inaction.
We had a federal court decision just recently that really called into question that safe third country agreement, which has been used to basically justify accepting or denying refugees or people that claim asylum at official ports of entry and thus creating the Roxham Road problem. With a federal court saying that this agreement is no longer valid, that it violates the charter, how do you secure the border? How do you protect people from gaming the system, taking advantage of the compassionate part and ignoring the rules-based part? Because I agree when you say fix it, but I haven't heard what that fix is.
Well, first, I've read the decision. It's actually easy to fix what the judge called out. I don't think it was a great decision, to be honest with you, but her concern was actually the incarceration of the people once they went back to the United States. So, Andrew, I think I can actually fix that as we renegotiate closing off the loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement. So until we do that, she delayed the decision by 6 months anyway, so it's not in effect. We may even be in government within 6 months. We need to turn Roxham Road into a border stop. And even temporarily, once that's done, the loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement is addressed. You can then say, did you claim asylum in the first country you were in? Yes. You then cannot claim, you can't forum shop in claiming asylum. So the temporary creation of a border stop there would fix this entirely. I've been advocating for this for 3 years, Andrew, and I do think we could, as part of our negotiations with the United States, to say, look, when we're returning people that cross illegally, we do not want them to go into this incarceration element for the offense, because our court has questioned the Safe Third Country Agreement. I think the U.S. want that treaty to be in place. So if we can have a new approach for them to be returned under, that would fit within the spirit of the decision.
Right now, we're facing a major employment crisis in Canada. We have, in many cases, CBSA no longer doing removals, deportations. We know the list of people waiting for a hearing for their asylum claim is ballooning. Do you think we need a wholesale reevaluation, whether it's a pause or a reduction, or even just a back to basics, back to square one redrafting of our approach to immigration right now?
Well, I think as we're fixing the failures of the Trudeau government on this and addressing the Roxham Road issue, which I've been talking about for several years, I think we can do a refresh to the system post-COVID, right? Because some of the skills, the express entry program, the great approach that Jason Kenney had to fill productivity gaps in our economy, that's going to be slowed because of unemployment. But here's a catch. We know that one thing that was hurting families during COVID with the closure of daycares and schools was childcare. So Ken, for a while, we pivot to more family reunification, particularly if it helps solve the care needs of a family or sometimes elderly care in the home. Mm-hmm. Can we pivot while the economic situation is sorting itself out in terms of unemployment levels, those sorts of things, to make sure that the system adapts to the needs of the country? That's what we should be doing. We should not do things the way they were done 50 years ago just for the sake of doing it the same way. We need to make sure that our system addresses the needs of Canada today, particularly post-COVID. So I think there's actually a pivot we can do to more family reunification to help families get to work if there's prolonged school closures or something like that. And then as we see the private sector recover, we should almost on an annual basis say, where are the gaps in our productivity in skilled trades in Ontario, or when the resource sector comes back after we win, are there some gaps in Western Canada? We should make sure the system is nimble enough to pivot to address those.
One of the things that most conservatives, I think, can agree on is that the carbon tax is a job killer. I think this is something that everyone on the right tends to get, even many people not on the right. You say in your platform that the carbon tax is gone. You also say you want a national regulatory and pricing scheme on industrial emitters. And your rationale for this has been that you don't want to target individual Canadian families, but rather target the companies themselves. We all know that any cost that a company has to bear gets filtered down. So any tax that's put on a manufacturer or distributor is something that Canadians are paying. So how can you say you're against the carbon tax when your plan seems to just move the tax to another payer?
No, there is no tax. There's no federal carbon tax. I will eliminate the carbon tax completely, Andrew. What I've said in terms of the national framework, we have to respect what the provinces are doing now. In BC, there's been their provincial carbon tax started by Gordon Campbell. I've talked to him about some of the challenges and problems that were caused, but he explained to me his rationale there. Quebec has a version of a cap and trade system. Alberta, Ontario, my own province, has a large emitter strategy, just working with emissions of the larger emitters. We need to follow the provinces here because guess what? They have shared jurisdiction on the economy. I've been saying this for years. The Court of Appeal in Alberta in February just supported my view when they said Trudeau's carbon tax is unconstitutional. We actually have to say on the federal government, how can we make sure we respect the different approach within a national framework and say this is how we're going to reduce emissions, not with a tax, but with partnering with the provinces to get their emissions down.
But does your platform, or does it not, say pricing?
Because the provinces are pricing.
But you say national pricing. So can you say that there is not going to be any federal price on carbon at a federal level for anyone, whether it's a family or an industrial emitter?
The provinces will be in the driver's seat. So I will respect what they do. Look, two great conservatives, my friends Jason Kenney and Doug Ford, have large emitter approaches where they're stepping down through a price on carbon for emitters. What the provinces decide to do, often with the cooperation of industry, I will respect. And the national framework is because we are reporting a Canadian response, and we have to recognize we have a confederation. We have a national unity crisis because Justin Trudeau doesn't understand that. That's why the Wexit movement is gaining steam, because he has attacked the ability for certain provinces to live to their economic potential. I will respect that. In fact, I will empower it. My first 100 days is all natural resources.
Just to confirm,
but if they want to work on reducing emissions and target working with and partnering with large emitters, why should Ottawa get involved, Andrew? We should say we are going to incorporate Alberta's approach alongside Quebec's approach. And we're not going to say this approach is bad and this one is good. We're going to say Canada's a diverse economy. We've got an offshore in Newfoundland and Labrador as well that's in trouble now because of Trudeau. We are going to try and make sure that we have a national respected approach that allows the provinces to lead.
But what if a province says they don't want any part of it? A provincial government in some province says we don't believe that we need to deal with emissions, we don't believe in a carbon tax. Does inaction fit into that national framework if that's what a province chooses?
If that's what the province chooses, yes. Look, these are we have to have a real climate change policy, a real environmental policy in the next election. If we don't, we lose. So the other candidates in the race aren't ready to run in an election this fall anyway, but I don't think they realize I've knocked on doors in Southern Ontario for 2 elections now where this was an issue. We were seen as not having real policy. I'm going to make sure we have real conservative approach so that when I say I'm killing the carbon tax, I'm going to say, here's what we're going to do. A lot of it will be partnering with the provinces, but can we invest in carbon capture and sequestration as part of our solution, particularly with some of the provinces that still use coal for generating electricity? Nuclear energy, I'm a big advocate of. Greenhouse gas emission free, you know, the left, they hate it because it's actually technology that will allow us to have a productive economy. The activists on the left, they want to shut down our economy. I want to grow our economy, particularly the resource economy that has given us this rich, wealthy, and respected nation. We're actually the best producer of all the goods we produce because of our human rights record, our rule of law, our Indigenous engagement. We don't need anyone, including the UN, telling us what to do. We are the world leader in environmental social governance. I will empower that, and at the same time, I will show Canadians I am very pro development and resource, oil and gas, forestry, agriculture, and we're going to have substantive policies that will reduce emissions without disrupting the economy. It's difficult, but a tax is what the Liberals do because it's easy and dumb. We are going to do smart policy, and Canadians that care about the environment will know the Conservatives will have a plan that will reduce emissions without them losing their job.
Fiscal management, going to be a huge problem in Canada as we look at what the next government is going to have inherited. We have deficits that are rising even beyond what they were before. The Justin Trudeau approach was that when the economy is great, it's time to spend, and when the economy is bad, it's time to spend. How do you balance the budget? How do you get the books in check without having to raise taxes or without having to cut spending? Or how do you accomplish all of those things that Conservatives want to do financially?
Well, you're right. The world did change. I thought we were dealing with a $25 billion deficit when we launched our campaign in Alberta in January, which was terrible enough because we had good economic times, strong employment numbers. Trudeau was raising taxes and still running huge deficits. So is this the guy that's going to dig us out of this hole? He got us in the hole. So our approach has to learn the lessons from Jim Flaherty and Stephen Harper. Have a plan to get to balance, keeping taxes low over a timeline, and be disciplined and stick to it.
Now, do you mean personal, corporate, or both?
Both. In fact, Andrew, small businesses, we're probably going to have to provide more tax relief. I want to bring back the elements for small businesses that Justin Trudeau took away with his war on small business. 70% roughly of Canadians work for small and medium-sized enterprise. 70%. Why do we have high unemployment and we'll likely have it coming out of COVID? Trudeau didn't save many jobs. He put everyone on the CERB. So I'm actually going to work with small businesses, and over the next few years, we actually may have to provide some tax relief to small businesses and maybe seniors on pension income because of tight circumstances for many of them. But we can do that. Stephen Harper did it. He took a 5-year program to do it after the 2009 recession. Ours will likely be longer, but I think if Canadians know that we are doing it for the long-term prosperity of the country, they will be with us. But the key part of my plan, Andrew, is taxes low, a plan to balance over a period of time, but a private sector renaissance. We need to eliminate the anti-development programs of Justin Trudeau. We need to renegotiate trade arrangements with the United States. We need a softwood lumber agreement. We need fair trade amongst free countries, free trade with democracies, and start taxing or tariffing the bad actors like the Chinas of the world. Mm-hmm. And Canada needs to help lead that process. We're not even at the table with Trudeau. Every country he's interacted with as Prime Minister, our relationship with that country is worse. Every single one. As foreign affairs critic for the Conservatives, I meet with them. They would often say to me behind closed doors, Andrew, what has happened to Canada? Right now, after 5 years of Trudeau, we are poorer and weaker at home and less respected around the world. That is why I'm ready to go in September to hold him to account and win an election that could come in the next few months We need to get our country back on track. We need to take it back from an ideological, out-of-touch government that has our future prosperity at risk.
You've been a big proponent of Kanzuk, which is an agreement, for those that can't decipher it from the letters, that would really put Canada in a special partnership with Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom. Is that really where you think the future of trade needs to be, which is to trade with the countries most like you, which really seems to be putting values assessment onto trade agreements? Or do you think that's a unique relationship outside of broader free trade policies with countries around the world, like we saw from the Harper government in which you were a minister?
The answer is a bit of both.
Okay.
Kanzuk is very special. Look, my sister married an Australian fighter pilot. She met when I was in the military, and he was on exchange with Canada. We have fought and died together with these countries. We're in the Five Eyes security partnership with them already, our closest relationship. So we should be doing more. In fact, Prime Minister Johnson is talking to Australia and New Zealand now about more trade, more capital sharing, more exchange of people and ideas between some of the closest countries. Where's Canada? Of course, Trudeau and Morneau, I think, was in Kenya on a wee trip. He wasn't actually at the meetings with some of our closest partners. So we have to be there. Beyond that, I do think when you say free and fair trade amongst free countries, it's not just Commonwealth or our traditional close allies. Japan, our relationship with Japan, an important trade partner, is in the doldrums after Trudeau. He skipped a leaders' meeting for the Trans-Pacific Partnership meetings to meet with Facebook rather than to meet with other world leaders. All of our relationships have deteriorated. India, the world's largest democracy, a Commonwealth partner, many of the same systems in terms of parliament and rule of law. There's more we can be doing there. We literally doubled trade with India under Harper. We all remember the state visit Justin Trudeau paid there. You could flash a few photos on the screen to remind people of his trip. They slapped tariffs on Canadian lentils right after that. We've had Italy tariff durum wheat after ridiculous comments Trudeau made about Italian and Greek immigrants to Canada. So we have to repair a lot of these relationships. And while Kanzuk will be a very unique one, I see doing more with Japan, India especially, a growing and important partner, France, a lot of our partners in Europe. I think we need the democratic world to stop allowing the bad actors of the world, the China, the Russia, the Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, to game the UN, to game the WTO. We see the results. The countries that play by the rules lose. So the democracies have to start standing up. I've been talking about this for several years. I ran on UN reform and holding back our dues when I ran in the 2017 leadership. Now I think we're ready to win and implement these as Prime Minister.
Just as we wind down here, do you feel that you have pivoted in some way from your 2017 run, or do you think that you're talking about a lot of the same issues? And if it is the latter, what makes you think that they're going to resonate this time?
I have not pivoted. You know, the media loves to say, O'Toole's very different. Almost all my policy is the same. What has changed? Justin Trudeau has divided this country to the point that people are giving up on it. My first rally in Nisku, Alberta, back when we could have rallies, the first question, I always take Q&A from my audience, was a veteran who stood up and said, "Thank you for your service, Erin. I served almost 30 years for my country, and I want to leave it now after what Trudeau's done to my province." Wow. I agree with what Derek said. Most Canadians don't know how tenuous our national unity is. A reporter in the press gallery, when I said my main priority will be unity, he kind of said, well, some of the issues they have out west aren't valid. That's part of the problem. We've got a Laurentian elite Ottawa bubble, and they don't realize that our country is at risk after an ideological Trudeau government. That fuels me. Am I more passionate and frustrated this time than in 2017? Absolutely, because of what Justin Trudeau done to a country that I believe in, that I'm proud of. I'm a patriot. Some campuses, that would be a bad word these days. I think a lot of Canadians want someone that's going to put our interests at the front of the agenda, make people proud of our history and our country. I'm hearing that everywhere I go. Years ago, when I was talking about Sir John A. Macdonald statues, I would get notes from people saying, thank goodness someone is standing up to this cancel culture type approach. That's what I will do as leader, and I can't stress it enough. If we allow the we scandal, the out-of-control situation with our economy, all of this, if we don't have a leader in the House this fall, we miss the opportunity to replace a corrupt and incompetent government. I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to unite the party and win.
We promised you a debate, and we told you and your team that there would be an opportunity for a closing statement in that. And with all the changes, I think we can keep the closing statement. So if you want to give, as people are putting their ballots forward in the next couple of weeks, that final pitch, please.
Well, thanks. I love a good debate. So I regret that, but I respect my colleagues in this race. I want their help as we rebuild and take back Canada from a government with Justin Trudeau that has their own personal interests ahead of the national interests. I'm ready to win. And Conservatives across the country need to know that there's a true blue Conservative that has won 3 times in the GTA, where we need to win seats here in Southern Ontario. If we win just most of what Doug Ford won 2 years ago in Ontario, we will form a strong, stable, majority Conservative government. I'm asking for the trust of members of our party to make sure we keep our movement united, grow it where we need to, and win the next election by standing up for the things we believe in. I'm a leader that's ready, in the House now, and I bring experience from outside of Ottawa at a time we need it. 12 years in the Canadian Armed Forces, I lived across the country, work in the private sector. I'm in it for you and your family. We need to replace a tired and corrupt Trudeau government.
Conservative leadership candidate Erin O'Toole, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Andrew.
That does it for the fireside chat portion of our evening here. The leadership candidates will be back in just a couple of moments with their scrums for the members of the Independent Press Gallery accredited media here. But my thanks to all of you who have tuned in, and again to Erin O'Toole and Derek Sloan for their participation. Back in a moment.
Well, wasn't that great? I say again, one of the finest interviews I've seen conducted in Canada by anyone who's not with Rebel News. Very sophisticated interview, starting off by taking the candidate Erin O'Toole at face value on his recent pronunciations of standing up for free speech and fighting cancel culture, but then putting to him, after a hearty discussion on that, the fact that it was him who canceled Jim Karahalios. And when Andrew Lawton put to Erin O'Toole the contradiction, O'Toole frankly sounded like any canceller who said, well, he hurt my feelings, he lied about me. Well, everyone who supports cancel culture has their reason. Because it wasn't a gotcha interview, it was a fireside chat, Andrew let that go, but I think the effect was quite clear. Listen, what a great start. You know what? A finer debate wasn't a debate. A finer conversation, a finer explication and demonstration of what these candidates stand for than the debates that we've seen so far. The first one conducted by the party, very weak. The second debate conducted by a writing association in Vancouver that I thought was excellent, but Peter MacKay, the Cowardly Lion, was not there. This debate, Dr. Leslyn Lewis says that she was ill. Peter MacKay took that as an excuse to run away. But I think the two candidates that were here today did themselves very well. I think the winner of the debate tonight is the Independent Press Gallery, that put on a first-rate professional event. It was perfect in terms of its production value. I say that because the first debate hosted by the party looked pretty low budget, low production values. The second debate put on by the Vancouver Area Writing Association didn't try to hide the fact that it was very low budget, which is the way a grassroots party ought to be. It was a debate by Zoom kind of thing. This one had excellent lighting, excellent set, good camera work. We were aware of some of these arrangements in advance. The Independent Press Gallery were members of it, so we did our best to participate. I've enjoyed sitting here tonight. It does sound like we're not too far away from the official scrums. And what do I mean by that? As with all debates of this nature, again, this isn't really a debate, it was two fireside chats. By the way, I think Peter MacKay would have served himself by coming on this. I think he would have had a chance to answer at length. He would have been prodded on all his weak points, but had a chance to really address them. I think that both candidates came out of this ahead of where they were. They both sounded quite smart. I think Andrew brought out the best of them, challenged them on their weak spots, but brought out the best of them. It was a great evening, I thought. And not too long either. It had a bit of a delayed start. I want to let you know that the young man who had the medical incident, Sam Eskenazi, his name was said earlier, so I don't mind saying his name again. He's doing fine. He's tweeting about it. He just explained that he blanked out or something. So, better to be cautious than not. So he's A-okay, and he's tweeting and sort of saying, I wish I was there. So that's a happy ending to that there. Now, I've made notes of some of the various things that were said, but you saw it just as I did. I thought it was interesting to see the difference in immigration between the two candidates. Andrew Lawton pressed Erin O'Toole fairly well, and to my surprise, Erin O'Toole talked about increasing immigration, saying, well, to bring in caregivers for families, basically bring in the grandparents to look after the kids. I don't know how that's going to go over with grassroots conservatives who are overwhelmingly for reducing immigration numbers. It sounds like Erin O'Toole wants to ramp it up to bring in more dependents. Having grandma and grandpa in the house to help the kids, I mean, I guess it solves a childcare situation. Oh, I hear in my ear that Andrew's back on stage. Let's take a listen.
To your question, the situation in Hong Kong has developed to the point where it should be untenable for most democracies around the world. And I understand that Mr. O'Toole, a main part of his platform is to support this Kanzuk agreement and reuniting the Commonwealth in a modern way. The people in Hong Kong were formerly members of our Commonwealth family, and they need our help right now. Would you, if you were Prime Minister, help liberate those people and repatriate, bring them back to the Commonwealth and bring them to Canada as refugees?
Yeah, so I have said that we should allow people from Hong Kong to come to Canada under refugee status. That's been part of my platform as well. I do believe that we need to work with our allies to put more pressure on China and to do what we can to prevent this bullying that's going on not only in their backyard but elsewhere as well.
Now, my follow-up is separate to that. It's in regards to your comments on supply management earlier today. A main point of Andrew Scheer running on supporting supply management was that he wanted support in Quebec. That utterly failed. The Conservative Party flopped in Quebec. What is the point of continuing on with that policy if it doesn't help us? It doesn't help the Conservative Party get seats in the province?
Well, I support supply management because I don't think we have a good alternative for it. I think there's always room to look at different options, and I'm fine to look at them. But it is a tricky situation, as I mentioned, with subsidies in other countries, as well as the property that these farmers have invested in. So I'm not doing it for supporting Quebec. I was in Quebec last week, and I was getting plenty of support on my immigration policy, which I neglected to mention tonight. But the Quebecers really love my idea to reduce immigration levels and give more control to the provinces. So for me, that's one of the biggest keys to Quebec.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan, for taking my question, and thank you to the Independent Press Gallery for creating an atmosphere where my colleagues and I don't have to ambush the candidates in the hallway. My first question for you, and you've spoken quite a bit about unity in the party and how you could be a unifier. My question is about the PPC voters and supporters. Is there a place for them in Derek Sloan's Conservative Party?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of the things that I'm talking about speak very strongly to people who like the PPC. And I welcome them into our party, and I welcome them to join us to get Canada back to where it needs to be. And I hear from a lot of PPC people, and I think that, frankly, I think that I'm the only leader of all the candidates that is strong enough on the sovereignty issues to bring those people back into the party.
Now, My follow-up question is, how do you make that happen? Because there is a lot of animosity, and I think a lot of that animosity comes from how the Conservative Party did treat them. I think they are conservative voters and supporters, or they had been in the past. So my question to you is, how do you be ecumenical towards them to bring them back into the fold?
Well, I think being really strong in the sovereignty issues and the civil liberty issues will bring them back into the fold. Obviously, I have no animosity towards them, and I don't think they have any animosity towards me. So, like I said, I welcome them into the party. I hope that they do vote Conservative under Derek Sloan leadership, and I'd be happy to talk to them about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Derek. My name is Nikkei Johnson. I'm from the Post-Millennial. I also have a question about China, and you've been quite hawkish about China throughout the leadership campaign. What would you identify as being Justin Trudeau's major policy failure with the Chinese regime?
Well, he's acted with them as he has with others by thinking that being nice will solve problems. And, as I've said before, smiles and hugs don't solve all world problems. And China is a country that responds to strength and is a country that responds to, working with other allies that have similar views. So, Justin Trudeau has, charted a very moderate course towards China, refusing, for example, to use the word Taiwan at all. And I believe that China's trampled all over him, notwithstanding that approach. So we need to have a tougher approach, and I think that I've tried to embody that in this race.
If you were to become prime minister, would you recognize Taiwan as a country?
I think we should do that. I think Taiwan has been an admirable leader in many fields, including some of the ways that it responded to COVID-19. But I think that we do need to recognize Taiwan and work with some of these other countries more closely.
Andrew Chapdos, Rebel News, thank you for showing up today. I appreciate that. I'm sure the rest of us do. I wanted to ask, we haven't seen any major politicians in this country condemn large gatherings, protests, specifically Black Lives Matter. I wonder if you are able to condemn that or willing to.
Well, I certainly think that one law needs to be followed by everybody. And so if it's illegal for you and I to have a large anti-mask or anti-lockdown rally, it should be illegal and condemned for others to do that as well. So I should go on to say, I don't agree with the complete lockdown method anyways, so I'm not going to condemn anybody. But it certainly has been hypocritical by our current leaders to condemn one type of protest but not another.
And my follow-up would be, do you consider Black Lives Matter a legitimate political organization, given what they've said about the past? I believe the Black Lives Matter leader of Toronto once called our Prime Minister a terrorist and a white supremacist. I just wanted to get your thoughts on them as an organization.
Well, there's certainly an activist organization that, in my view, has had leaders and other people involved with it that have said very incendiary things. So the mic was reverberating when you were talking. I think, did you ask me if they were a legitimate political organization?
Yes. Yeah. I just want to get your thoughts on them.
Right. Well, there's certainly a left-leaning organization that, again, has had people associated with it that has said very radical things. So I think that it would be fair for our media, and particularly the mainstream media, to be clear about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Sloan. Greg Staley from Diverge Media. Off your campaign website, under balancing the budget, you say, and I quote, "Growing the economy in reality means real people and real communities growing their own local economy. That is why most of my economic platform will be the results of grassroots policy process to vote on proposals from every riding and region to grow their local economies." My question to you is this. Can you explain exactly what your vision is to grow that process and have the regions and the constituents in it vote on those policies?
Yeah, that's it. So I have said other things about the economy as well, but I will focus on the grassroots process. So I believe that as a leader, one of the things that I'm here to do is to serve the interests of the members. And I take very seriously the grassroots policy process, which typically culminates in a convention where we discuss and vote on these things. And with COVID, that's placed some uncertainty about when that next convention will take place. But we need to make sure that we have a rigorous policy development process, if need be in a virtual environment leading into this next election.
And then my follow-up question would be on public sector spending. Would you, on a federal level, cut that, or would you allow the local and regional constituents under your policy idea to have that say on their budget and policy decisions?
Sorry, could you repeat that? Just with the echo, I couldn't catch that.
So on public sector spending, there's obviously a massive deficit because of COVID, and it's going to need to be addressed. Do you plan on addressing that at a federal level or allowing the local constituents under your policy process vision to have that vote?
Well, cutting at the federal level must happen, and I think I think that's something that all conservatives agree with, and certainly would be part of any policy process.
Mr. Sloan, Samuel Racine from Dominion Media. In 2017, the past Premier of Quebec wanted to reopen the constitutional debate with the federal government because, as you know, Quebec never signed the Constitution in 1982. Today, with growing separatist sentiment in the West, would you be willing to sit down with provinces, both Western Canada and Quebec, to reopen the constitutional debate?
Absolutely. I think now might be the time, given the rift that we're seeing in different regions, and it may be the only thing that might solve it. So thank you for asking that.
Okay, you're welcome. And the follow-up would be in regards to TikTok. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said they are considering banning the app in the U.S. Would you be willing to consider similar actions, banning it in Canada as well?
Absolutely. I think that we need to take very seriously, Chinese spying and surveillance in Canada. And I haven't seen the intelligence reports or anything on TikTok, but I would certainly, as leader, look at it very closely and potentially do the same thing.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. It looks like it's been 10 minutes. Thank you so much. I've been given the signal over here. So sorry, David, but
okay.
We'll talk to you later. Thank you so much.
Well, what a pleasure to see rebels take to the mic. Cian Bexley, Sheila Gunn-Reid, and Adrian Chapados. Oh, here's Erin O'Toole.
Yes, hello, Mr. O'Toole. David Menzies with Rebel News, and thank you so much for showing up tonight. Greatly appreciate that. Mr. O'Toole, I'm just curious, given the numerous scandals committed by the Justin Trudeau Liberals in their several years since taking office, I'm curious, looking back, what indeed went wrong for the Andrew Scheer Conservatives in the 2019 election campaign in terms of not being able to form a government?
Good question. I think the biggest mistake we made is we thought we were going to win as a result of the SNC Jody Wilson-Raybould scandal. And we didn't actually put forward a vision, particularly for our economy, particularly some of the resource sectors that are struggling and leading to frustration and confederation. So we have to hold them to account for scandals. As the only candidate in this race, other than Derek and I, we can do this in the House of Commons on September 21st. We have to hold them to account for their ethical failings, but we also have to say to Canadians, here's what we're going to do to get our country back on track, get people working, address the out-of-control spending, restore our reputation around the world. So we can't just think we're going to win by default. We have to take the fight to the Liberals, not just on ethics, but on ideas for the future of the country.
Mr. O'Toole, do you think part of the problem when we look back with the hindsight of 2020 is that we have an increasingly left of center media in Canada right now that is increasingly being funded by the federal government, $1.5 billion for the CBC each year, $600 million bailout for the newspapers, money for the magazines, et cetera, et cetera. I am curious if you think that was one of the factors in perhaps not giving the Conservatives a fair shake, and how would you plan to alter that kind of outcome if you are indeed the leader running in the next election?
Well, I've run clearly since the beginning of the race before COVID, which now seems like a decade ago, but I've run clearly on ending the media bailout fund, which of course Justin Trudeau put his friendly supporters on the board to decide who gets the money. But I've also said I'm going to defund CBC television, English and digital. It's time to shake up the landscape. It's also why I support the Independent Press Gallery as well. We don't do things the way they were done 50 years ago and have the government competing with the private sector, particularly on digital and television, and then a few years later, the government to bail out the media in the private sector that they hurt, I think that will help shake up the landscape, as is the independent press gallery. As I said in my conversation with Andrew, some of the best examinations of the debates in Parliament don't take place in Hansard or the press gallery. It's making sure that Canadians can hold their elected officials to account and making sure there's a broad cross-section of viewpoints in the media. And that's what I think my platform represents. And I think I'm excited because the more we can get our message to voters, the better.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Erin O'Toole, Daniel Boardman from the National Telegraph. So as you may be aware, for consecutive years, anti-Semitism has now been the number 1 hate crime in Canada, about 36% of all hate crimes in this city. There was a recent scandal where the head of Islamic Relief Worldwide had to be fired for multiple anti-Semitic comments, including saying Jews were pigs and apes, with a cascade of other violent rhetoric. Now, considering Canada actually gives tens of millions of dollars of our taxpayer money to Islamic Relief Worldwide through its Canadian affiliate, Islamic Relief Canada, which has its own anti-Semitic scandals, what will you do as Prime Minister to make sure that our tax dollars aren't going to organizations that have anti-Semitism scandals and our allies, Israel and the United Arab Emirates, say are terrorist affiliated?
Well, good to finally meet you, Mr. Boardman. I've spoken out about anti-Semitism for many years, including taking part in a debate on the BDS movement in Parliament that I think is a modern way of dressing up anti-Semitism, and I was proud of our Conservative caucus that spoke on this. As the critic for foreign affairs and for international development, I met with all development arms of all faith groups from all communities. And I said to Islamic Relief when I met with them, if there was any suggestion that any partnering money that the Trudeau government spent, there would be a shutting off of the taps under my government, because we will partner, but if we're actually helping lives, we will not partner with groups that are corrupt, groups that can't confirm that funds are not being commingled with terror funds, and with groups that are promoting hate or any radical ideology. In fact, we need to make sure that we stand up for this, not just here at home, but around the world. And so I think having someone that actually says that in the room, somebody that talks about cutting the CBC when the CBC asks me, I think Canadians will find refreshing.
All right, follow up. Would you consider that Canadians who raise this specific issue or issues like this being hit with $2.5 million lawsuits would be, in your estimation, an example of cancel culture?
Well, that's a good question. As a lawyer, we learn a maxim in law school that truth is the ultimate defense in any libel case. So without commenting on any legal matter that I'm not aware of or know of any knowledge of, the truth should always be paramount. So if someone's telling the truth and is facing a lawsuit as a result of that, that truth should set them free.
Hi, Erin. It's MacKay Johnson from the Post-Millennial. So a few days ago, you had an interview with the CBC, and they happened to cut out the last bit of the interview where you said you would defund them, and you made the arguments to defund them. The establishment press here in Canada have either gorged themselves on media subsidies or they are entirely dependent on the taxpayer. Do you think Conservative leaders can still trust the CBC and the establishment media here?
As Conservative leader, I will get our message out through all means, which is why I said I want to accredit the independent press gallery and make sure we modernize the coverage of Parliament. I was very disappointed that they edited out my response to a question that impacted them. At the very least, I thought it was showing a favoritism to an issue that would affect their own situation. But at worst, it was actually not allowing me to explain a policy that I think is quite rational. And if you saw my answers in the pandemic, we've seen how important broadband coverage is for families learning at home, studying in school. Should we be subsidizing the family feud? Or should we take some of these funds so that people can weather the next closure of schools by teaching their kids at home through better broadband coverage and then allowing to choose their media sources, their entertainment sources on their own? So this is what I think Canadians are ready for, a modernization, a shake-up, and defunding parts of the CBC that should not be competing with the private sector.
But do you believe that the CBC provided fair election coverage in 2019?
I wasn't on the leaders tour. I never think we get fair coverage generally. I'll be honest with you there. I feel that if you look at the Trudeau scandals, there's a minimization of that, and the slightest faux pas by a Conservative, and it's the end of days. Nico, I replaced a member of Parliament who resigned essentially for a $17 glass of orange juice. How many hundreds of thousands did the Trudeau family receive by a charity that he funneled money to in the middle of a pandemic? This is what I'm talking about. Mr. Marneau should resign immediately. It's disgraceful that he thinks he could still do this job, having conducted himself the way he has. I think Conservatives, we have higher standards on ourselves, and that's what Canadians are going to expect after an unethical and corrupt Trudeau government.
Hi, thanks so much for being here tonight. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. And my question for you today is, if vaccines do end up becoming mandated by Justin Trudeau or health authorities, what do you think will happen and should happen to those who refuse to take the vaccine?
Well, I think, people should never be forced to do anything in a modern democratic society. What I think we haven't had in Canada is a proper and responsible debate on a whole range of things, including masks. In fact, Derek was attacked for questioning the chief public health officer. I was critical of the Trudeau government for not talking and debating about masks. The vaccine issue will be even more important, where people will have to see the evidence, see the clinical studies, and be able to make a decision. With rights and responsibilities, that gives free choice, which I defend and support. But it may, as people make that choice, there may be responsibilities that flow from it that limit their ability in some circumstances if we're in a second wave or major social distancing decisions come back. We will have to weigh how many people have been immunized to see if we have a herd immunity approach. I try and study the science, but I think in a democratic society like ours, there is not a forcing of anything on anyone. Thank you very much.
Very interesting questions. I thought the most interesting was from our own Drea Humphrey about mandatory vaccines. I think the answer, if I had to summarize or interpret what Erin O'Toole said, was he wouldn't force people to take the vaccine, but there would be consequences to them. I don't know exactly what that means. I think he maybe hasn't come to a conclusion on that, or maybe he senses that he has an answer he doesn't quite want to release yet. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting question, well put, and I'm glad that Drea had a chance to put it. As you know, Drea Humphrey is our new reporter based in Vancouver. I'm glad she had a chance to put her question, having flown in all the way from Vancouver. Other questions there? Kian Bexley, of course, asking about Hong Kong refugees. That was Derek Sloan. David Menzies asking Erin O'Toole what went wrong. I thought that was a good question. Daniel Boardman asking a very passive-aggressive, cryptic question about a lawsuit, and I think the lawsuit they're talking about is Erin O'Toole's campaign manager, or campaign chairman rather, Walid Solomon, who's a Muslim activist. I think he's suing Daniel Boardman, that young reporter there, for millions of dollars in defamation for something Boardman said, and it was very. Like they both, nice to meet you, finally, Mr. Boardman. What would you say if someone was being sued? Well, someone should have the defense of truth. It was very strange, wasn't it? I think what's going on there is that Erin O'Toole's campaign chairman is suing that young lad for millions of dollars. I didn't think that exchange was particularly illuminating or useful for anyone, including Boardman, O'Toole, and Solomon. There was a young lad from the Post-Millennial, I think his name is Nico, asking a good question: is the CBC ever fair? the Post-Millennial is owned by Erin O'Toole's digital campaign manager. So I thought the question was fair, though, nonetheless. I think it ought to be disclosed that he is actually on the O'Toole team. But that was a fair enough question. There was a fellow there from Quebec. I think he said he was with Dominion Media. His name was Samuel. And he asked a question to Derek Sloan about should TikTok be banned. I thought that was a very good question and a very plain answer from Derek Sloan, which is yes. I note that 7 questioners put questions to Derek Sloan and only 4 had a chance to put them to Erin O'Toole. Drea didn't even get a follow-up, so I'm not sure what happened there in terms of time. I didn't keep an eye on the clock. Maybe O'Toole simply took longer to answer each question, so that's why only half as many questions were put. Oh, you know what? Speaking of which, I think our friend Drea Humphrey is now ready to join us via Skype. Drea, how you doing?
Good. It was fun to be here with Rebel for my first debate that wasn't really a debate, but...
Well, I was just saying a moment ago, I'm so glad you got a question in because I think you came the farthest of any reporter in the room. Sounded like we had some folks there from Quebec, Samuel of the Dominion Media. I had not heard of them before. I think I detected a Quebec accent. You flew in all the way from Vancouver, and I thought you had a simple and plain question. What do you think will happen, and what do you think should happen to people who don't want to take the vaccine? What did you think of Erin O'Toole's answer to you?
Well, I think I would have liked my follow-up to be, well, because he was kind of saying it would depend. He didn't really fully answer the question, so I was going to follow up saying, well, what would it look like if we didn't get herd immunity with the vaccine? Then what would the consequence be for those who still refuse the vaccine? So as time would have it, I didn't get to that, but I think he didn't completely answer the question. He did say that he doesn't believe things should be forced upon people, but then he kind of left a window open for what I kind of heard, that where it may be okay.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt too, that he wasn't really committing to anything. And, there's all sorts of theories out there. Well, will you need a vaccine passport? Will you be able to go out in public? Sure, you don't have to take it, but are you quarantined in your own house? His answer, in some ways, could not have been any different. I mean, I don't think anyone would say, yes, we will pin you down and jab a needle into your arm. I don't think, well, maybe Trudeau would support that, but I don't think anyone else. But if you're saying, no, I believe in your right not to take it, but what happens after that, I can't tell you. That's a guy leaving the door open for quarantining you, house arrest. He really is, and I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here. I'm just saying, if you tried to bring in a made-in-China rushed vaccine for this Wuhan virus right now, given all we know about the lies that China has propagated and all the media propaganda, I think a lot of Canadians would say, yeah, no thanks, don't jab that needle in me. And I think you would have authoritarian, I mean, if they're being this harsh with masks, imagine how harsh they'll be with vaccines. Can I ask you, did he just simply walk out at that time, or why did he leave at that moment? Because I don't think, like, it felt cut off. You didn't get the follow-up. Did he just walk out, or did someone say, time's up?
It did seem rather fast. It seemed quicker than Derek Sloan's lines of questions, but I can't say for sure exactly why he walked out. So I think it was probably the time. Actually, no, sorry. I remember now. Somebody did stop him and say it was time.
Oh, okay. Because it was odd that you didn't get the follow-up. According to my notes, if I took my notes correctly, 7 people asked questions and follow-ups to Derek Sloan. So that's 14 individual questions, and only 4 people asked questions of Erin O'Toole, and you were one of them, but you only got one. So he answered half as many. Maybe he spoke for twice as long. So I'm not going to crack down on him. I think he should have stayed for a follow-up from you, but I'm just sympathetic to you for having made the journey. I've talked to a couple of our teammates tonight, and Trey, it's such a pleasure to have you at an event I'm excited about tonight because, first of all, I think the event went beautifully. I know that Leslie Lewis and Peter MacKay didn't attend, but that's their funeral. I think that the 2 candidates who did attend did very well. And I actually think the star of the night was Andrew Lawton, who was a beautiful interviewer, asked very thoughtful questions, was very well prepared. had a good patter, didn't indulge himself, was fair. I really enjoyed the event, and the production quality was very high, higher than the previous two events. I felt great about it. I wish I could have been down there, but I had to be here holding the fort. Can you tell me any other observations from inside? You saw when I left. I left about an hour and a half before it got going. So I missed out. How many people were in the room? How many new media? There's that Dominion media guy. There's the Diverge media guy. So there were some people I had never heard of before. How many folks were there?
I would say behind the scenes there was probably maybe 30 to 40.
Wow, that's
people.
pretty good.
Yeah, it was a good turnout, and it's nice to be able to do this. You know, we're coming out and being able to be together. We socially distanced and everything like that, so it was nice to be present. And I don't know if you know or if everybody knows, it started off with kind of a rough start because someone fell ill when he was starting off the commentary. So, but it looks like everything turned out well for him. So that's great.
Yeah, I saw a tweet that young man, we know him, he works for True North, his name is Sam Eskenazi, and he's tweeting that he's okay, so it was very dramatic. Thank God it wasn't anything worse. It wasn't a debate, so I can't say who do you think won the debate, but if I were to say who do you think made the most ground, I guess with, and not just in general, but with the Conservative Party, so that's going to be a different kind of voter. You're not at this point trying to win a general election. You're not trying to win over Liberals who are disaffected with Justin Trudeau. You're trying to win over the party base. Based on, and you're from Vancouver, so that's a whole different kettle of fish politics-wise. Things are a bit different over there. But from your point of view, who do you think made a bigger success of the night? I think both gentlemen did well, but who do you think won the evening?
Yeah, so I agree with you, and I think it worked in their favor that they both had, I think it was 35 minutes each to steal the show and calmly talk, and I think they both did very well on that. An actual winner, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm a little biased with this, but I would still give it to Sloan. I gave it to him the last two debates, and only just because he is so firm and just so straightforward with all of his remarks. And I think people really appreciate that, and they're not getting that from our current Prime Minister, and they didn't get it from Andrew Scheer. So. Yeah,
you know, I think that's a keen observation. I've said very supportive things about his performance in the last two debates as well, and I've had a chance to interview him a couple of times too. Erin O'Toole does, however, have the flow. He has the patter. He's been in the politics game for years, so even if he's not giving a good answer, he gives a not good answer well. He's smooth. And one of the things that I appreciate Leslie Lewis's campaign very much, but you can tell she hasn't spent 10 years practicing the talking points. Sometimes it sounds like she's considering a question for the first time, whereas in the case of Derek Sloan and Erin O'Toole, they've answered everything 5 times, so it's like they just push this button or play this message track. I have to say, Leslie Lewis, because she started off as a bit of a novice, I thought she made great improvements as the campaign went along. I'm sort of disappointed that she wasn't here tonight, but I don't doubt that she had a health issue. What do you make, Drea, of the fact that Peter MacKay, at the last minute, said, I'm not going? And I mean, Candace Malcolm, her opening remarks were very, she was obviously very disappointed in Peter MacKay. I think she put too much stock in him. I mean, frankly, who cares about him? It was a great event for the press gallery. Everything on Candace's end was a great success. I get it. She felt burned by Peter MacKay. Well, she's not the only one. But I thought it was great that the event went on. Do you think Peter MacKay even cares that he's spurning grassroots members and grassroots media, or do you think that's sort of his shtick? He's the elite candidate and you're the rabble. He doesn't have to dirty himself with you.
Well, you know, they say actions speak louder than words. This is not the first time he's done it with a grassroots debate style event, and I've been told he lives in the area here. So it really, really does show that, in my mind, I think there's something else going on than what we've heard. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is actually the third debate There was another debate that he didn't show up to. I think he double booked or his team double booked him or whatnot. So at this point, at this part of the game with the campaign, where I assume some people have held onto their ballot just to make sure they're going to vote correct, this should be a priority. And to use Dr. Lewis's ear infection as some sort of reason to not show up, I think it's really telling to what type of leader he would be. And we've seen Kian try to, run after him and say, hey, why are you not answering enough questions? And he says, it's called winning.
Yeah.
So This is probably his strategy for winning, not answering the questions we want to hear.
Well, Drea, listen, it's great to catch up with you. And I want to just tell you, I think you're doing a great job as a rebel. I saw you briefly when I was down there today, and I had to rush away, so I didn't have a chance to really connect. But I want to say that I've had nothing but absolutely fabulous feedback on how you're doing personally, the substance of your videos, your great attitude, and I'm so proud that you're on our team. And I'm glad that you could come out to Toronto on short notice. It's a long journey from BC, so thanks for being there. And I'm just out of the corner of my eye, I'm seeing comments on the live chat. People are really glad you're here, so thanks, Drea.
Well, thank you so much, Ezra, and all the rebels. Love you guys all, and I'm happy to be part of the team.
Right on. Well, thanks very much. I'll let you go back in there. It looks like things are sort of winding down. We've had a chance to say hi to a couple of teammates, but if there's any other rebels still there, I'd love to have them come to the mic and tell me their thoughts too. So feel free to bring the others.
All right, they're here.
All right, nice to see you, Drea. There you have it, Drea Humphrey, who is our newest rebel. And she's just done an amazing job. I love her positive attitude, and she's courageous, and she has the most important quality for being a rebel, which is she's not afraid to tell the other side of the story. And I think you saw that even in her one question. She was not allowed a follow-up, which I'm sort of disappointed in, but if someone did call time, I guess that's fair enough. But asking about vaccination, that's thinking ahead, and that's thinking like a contrarian, which is the rebel way. I understand that we have our old friend David Menzies. Hey, David, how you doing?
Hey, it's fantastic. How about yourself, my friend?
I'm good. Were you wearing the hat inside the whole time, or did you just put that on for this interview here?
I just put it on for you. I figured that the captain requests a degree of formality on the bridge, and therefore I brought my Sunday best.
Well, I better live up to that because I'm not even wearing a tie, but thank you for wearing a fancy hat. That's your fanciest hat. No, it's become your trademark this summer. You've been doing a great job. Well, you had a chance to ask a very interesting question to Erin O'Toole, which is what went wrong, and to ask about the media bailout. How did you feel about the answers that O'Toole gave you?
I don't think he drilled down as deep as I would have wanted him to, Ezra. I think it would have been fantastic if, and I understand he is friends with Andrew Scheer, but I think it would have been fantastic if he had the, the intellectual honesty to say, in hindsight, I think it was probably a big mistake to, shun Rebel News. 1.3 million YouTube subscribers and growing, red meat conservatives, most of them, I assume, and in the meantime, embrace, as you so gratefully say, the mean girls of the media, the Toronto Star, the CBC, the Globe and Mail, really in a fool's errand, Ezra, given that look how quickly they turned upon Andrew Scheer for the most, minor league stuff that, he wasn't really an accredited insurance broker, and so forth. So it was a flawed strategy, but on the bright side, moving forward, and actions speak louder than words, here we are, the Independent Press Gallery. There was Erin O'Toole, there was Derek Sloan, and Leslie Lewis would have been here had she not been on doctor's orders with the ear infection. I don't understand Peter MacKay dropping out for, as our lovely colleague Sheila Gunn-Reid said, earache solidarity.
She was great.
I don't buy that as an excuse. And there was talk, I don't know if you got into it in the live stream, Ezra, that Peter MacKay had been double booked. He was evidently going to be at the Confederation Club in London, Ontario on the same day at the same time. so that he was going to have to cancel last minute one of the events. And if it was always his intent not to show up at this debate, then why in the world would he accept the invitation in the first place? I just think that's bad form, and it's downright rude.
Yeah, well, bad form and downright rude, those are some of the characteristics of the Peter MacKay campaign. I mean, I'm just serious. I think it's been a disastrous campaign in many ways. He claims he's winning when Cian Bexley accosted him at the party debates, I don't know, I guess about a month ago. He ran away from Cian. He ran into the potty. He ran into the bathroom, realized that there was no second back exit, looked in the mirror and said, "What am I doing?" And he came out of the bathroom, and Cian said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm winning." And I don't know, maybe if he's winning, then he's winning. But why not win gracefully? And why not win in a way that you bring the party together afterwards? Because, and I heard a little bit of that from both the candidates tonight, and Andrew Lawton put it to Derek Sloan, which is, look, there's been some folks in caucus who've elbowed you a bit. What are you going to do? He said, well, you know, winning helps fix things. People will come together. And he addressed it. Peter MacKay seems to be going out of his way to antagonize not only other candidates, which I guess is how you do it, but the party base. I mean, Candice Malcolm was, you could see she was truly, offended is the wrong word, hurt is probably the wrong word, but she felt wronged. You know, and I think she overstated it a bit, as in the success of the end, which I think was a complete success. The production quality was very high. The turnout sounds like Drea was saying there's 30 or 40 people there or more. That's huge. That's more than were at the other two events, by the way. Andrew Lawton was in fine form, so I don't think she should have said, "Oh, I needed Peter MacKay to make the event." But I think she accurately conveyed to the base her disgust for Peter MacKay's pettiness. And I have to tell you, Candice Malcolm is well respected by conservatives. She's a firm conservative, but she's never mean. She's thoughtful and smart. She has lots of scoops. She has a foot in the mainstream in the Toronto Sun, but also a foot in her own project, True North. She's a builder. She's building I think she's very highly respected. And if he is offending her, that's dumb. That is dumb, because even if he wins, which I don't know if he will need support of her and people like her. And he's just frittering it away. Okay, this little soliloquy from me. What do you say, David?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Ezra. And I think Candice has every right to feel hurt and offended. I mean, considerable money and effort and resources went into this. And I think the conservative base is going to recognize this as a slight. And I don't think that's a winning strategy. But let's just say he does think he's winning, or he actually is winning. He is the prohibitive favorite. Let's just pretend that's the deal. I don't know, is this a campaign team adopting the Joe Biden election model? Like keep crazy Joe in the basement. Don't let him say anything. Let's hope we don't actually have a debate. You know, it's funny, Ezra, when you look back at the inventory of what Hillary Clinton did wrong in 2016, everyone always says, she didn't go to those 4 steel belt states, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. When they analyze the 2020 election in the U.S., I think the question's going to be, which state did Joe Biden go to?
Well, the thing with Joe Biden is, I think he's losing his cognitive abilities, and I'm not saying that as an insult. I think he is, and I'm upset about it, because I saw a video of him where he said, and I'm great to be back at this community center. It was a community center he worked at decades ago, and he said, "Oh, that's the other place. I'm just joking, haha." That was no joke. And I think Peter MacKay is not losing his cognitive abilities. But Peter MacKay has so many dumb answers that they don't want him to give them in public before they think he can win. So, Peter MacKay's not dumb. Well, I think he's a little bit dumb. Like Justin Trudeau. But he has other skill. He's not losing his marbles. But they just want, Andrew Lawton would have skillfully vivisected him today. And it was very interesting to watch how friendly and gentle. Andrew had plotted this out. In particular, the way he talked to Erin O'Toole about cancel culture and then brought it back to the canceling of Jim Carahalios. That was artistry. I can only have imagined someone with the brightness of Andrew Lawton, who was clearly a policy, had a great command of policy and very prepared. I think Lawton would have carved up MacKay with a smile on his face. And so that's why MacKay was here. It's not that he's losing his marbles. It's that he can't debate and he'll be exposed for being not a real conservative. Again, I'm rambling. Back to you, David.
No, I think you're right. I wasn't meaning to make the connection that he's the Canadian version of Joe Biden. No, not at all. I just think if there's this presumption that we're in the lead, let's just park the car and not do any kind of self-inflicted wounds of saying anything silly or stupid or politically incorrect. And it's almost a cowardly campaign. So that's where I'm going with that. And I got to be honest, Ezra, I was impressed by Peter MacKay from the get-go when he said, he made the hockey metaphor analogy about Andrew Scheer having a breakaway on an empty net and missing. I thought, wow, this guy is, speaking the Tim Hortons common man talk. And then he went from that to, you might recall, first week of January at the Old Mill, I wanted to ask him a free speech question, the way you were getting interrogated by the Elections Commission people. And his answer to me was, I feel like I'm being interrogated right now. Come on, that was a softball he could have hit out of the ballpark, a freedom of speech question. And then Cian Bexley running around the hotel like it's a game of tag, and Peter MacKay jumping into a bathroom. Yeah. And as you rightly said, folks, if you're trying to outwit a journalist, the one room in the building you don't want to go to is the bathroom. Almost all the bathrooms I've ever been in have one way in and one way out. It's the same door. So Cian just stood there, which is kind of creepy in a way. You're hanging around a bathroom to speak to someone who hopes to be the prime minister of this country. So if I were Peter MacKay, I would man up. Say what you mean what you say, and for goodness sakes, don't cancel literally at the last minute based on another candidate's ear infection. That has to be a political first.
Yeah. You're so right. If you are a red Tory, there are red Tories in the party, and perhaps red Tories can win. I don't know. Perhaps you say, I'm a red Tory, you're a blue Tory, we can coexist. We need to expand the tent if we're going to win back blue Liberals. So don't be scared of it. Let's treat each other with respect. I think a red Tory is what's needed to crack area code 416 and 905 and maybe even win some seats in Quebec. So yeah, I'm not going to be as right-wing as the other guys, but I'm talking about winning. Oh, okay. So at least he's honest, he's owning who he is, and he's not playing games. And maybe someone like that could actually, if he said, I'm not a social conservative, but we can work together because we have more in common with each other than we do with Trudeau. Come on, there's so many nice ways of putting it. Ronald Reagan once said a 10% enemy is still a 90% friend. I'm just coming up with language that a red Tory could use instead of running away, shouting, canceling, being such a baby, hiding in the potty. And my main reaction is, if you're running into the bathroom because Cian Bexley is chasing you with a camera, maybe you're not ready to take on Justin Trudeau or Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping. If you're hiding in the bathroom from Cian, maybe you're not ready for international high-stakes free trade negotiations. And same with Erin O'Toole, frankly. Oh, I complained to the party and had Jim Carahalios kicked out because he said something about me that was a lie. I got news for you, Erin. You're going to be lied about every single hour of every single day for the rest of your life because you're a politician. And if you're going to be a crybaby about it, you'll do nothing else. Tell the truth, correct the record, move on, and get a thicker skin. I think that was actually Erin O'Toole's weakest moment of the day, where he went from a very robust and noble discussion about free speech and cancel culture, like he went on for 5 full minutes, 10 full minutes almost, about free speech and cancel culture, and then it was like Andrew Lawton flipped a switch when he said, why did you make a complaint? Well, because he was mean to me, and because he was lying about me. Yes, welcome to politics. Are you going to complain to Mummy when Justin Trudeau lies about you with the $30 million campaign budget? Anyways, I hear in my ear that your colleague, Sheila Gunn Reid, is on standby. David, I want to say before I let you go, you have had some of the best pandemic journalism, and you've about the situation we've been in for the last 5 months. But recently, your coverage of the Antifa-style, Black Lives Matter, protest-style events in Ontario have been first-rate and have been extremely popular with Canadians. And I know a reason why that is, David, because you're the only journalist covering it. So thank you and congratulations, and keep it up.
Thank you. It is a pleasure, Ezra. Thank you so much for your kind words. And I will exit stage right and have the lovely Sheila, the she-devil Gunn Reid, come into view right now. Thank you very much, Bob.
All right, you're doing great, David. Thank you. Sheila, the she-devil. He's so funny. You know, David and Sheila have this banter. Every day at 12 noon Eastern time, we do a live stream. And I do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but I'm busy sometimes and I travel. So as a habit now, Sheila and David do sort of a tag team on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it is very funny. Some of the jokes are a little bit off color. You can sort of get the feeling for that. Anyways, I hear Sheila is on deck right now. Sheila, are you there yet? No, not quite yet. I'm hearing in my ear. Need another minute. I'll take a moment to catch up on some... yeah. Adjusting the camera. Let me blaze through a few super chats. I'll save the super chats for later. Sheila, great to see you. Independent Press Gallery event. The fact that the event happened at all, I think, I was saying, I spoke to Candace earlier today, actually, about Peter MacKay dropping out, and I said, look, we're probably not going to hear things that new from the candidates. You know, I learned a bit about each candidate. But what's really the big news tonight is that the Independent Press Gallery is in the house. I think it was a great success, and I think the world knows about the Independent Press Gallery. And the event went off. I mean, there was a little bump of the road. Sam had a medical incident. Thank God he's okay. No big deal. You know, a couple of candidates bowed out. You know what? The event was great. That's how it looked like from me. How did it look like in the building?
If you didn't know that plans had changed, you would not know that plans had changed. You know, Andrew Lawton was phenomenal. He's a phenomenal moderator.
Oh, that was so good. I was just saying that's the best interview I've had on seen of either of those men. The best. Andrew
Carved them up like a Christmas turkey, and they didn't even know what was going on. And to Andrew's credit, you would never know if he supports either one of them, neither one of them. There were no favorites being played. The candidates both got equally as tough questions, which I think is a testament to the kind of moderator and the research that Andrew did, just planning this, and then being able to just switch it on the fly, change the format, and continue on. I mean, just great work all around by the Independent Press Gallery.
Yeah, you know what? I think the finest interviewer in the entire Anglosphere is a gentleman from Scotland who just retired from the BBC. His name is Andrew Neil. And he's brilliant and he's funny. He's got that beautiful Scottish brogue. But the reason he's so good is he is so utterly well prepared. He knows that he's like a lawyer in a cross-examination. And he's thought in advance of every possible answer. And you saw that with Andrew. Andrew Lawton is like a young Andrew Neil. And for those of you who don't know Andrew Neil, I encourage you to Google him. And you will say, I have just found one of the greatest interviewers in beautiful. So I think tonight the real winner was Andrew Lawton. Now, I'm not just praising him because I like the guy and he comes on our show. That was great journalism. And you know what? That kind of great journalism is in the Independent Press Gallery. I listened to all the questions, and I thought Daniel Boardman's question about a lawsuit was a little weird. I mean, if you have something to say it. It was also cryptic and passive-aggressive, as so was the answer. But I thought every other question was interesting. I mean, I would have chosen a few different ones, but I really enjoyed the questions. They were not your standard media party questions. I liked the question about TikTok. I liked Drea's question about vaccines. I liked your question about reaching out to the People's Party of Canada. I thought that was a great question. I put it to you, Sheila, that the questions asked today were better than the questions asked at any legacy media press event.
I would agree with you. And actually, Andrew Lawton and I were talking about that. I think what we do here at Rebel News is normal journalism for normals, done by normals. We ask the questions that the normal people want answers to, the stuff that you ask around your dinner table, the stuff that you wonder about on your commute. We don't ask the sanitized, clean, easy, soundbite friendly questions to politicians that they get from the CBC. We ask the normal people questions, the stuff that you're going to have to deal with on a campaign trail barbecue. And I think I'm proud to say, I think those were sort of the questions, at least, that we asked here when we took to the mic. And I'm proud to say that Kian and I were number 1 and number 2 for first questions for the very first event of the Independent Press Gallery. And I turned around when I was in line and it was just a sea of rebels behind me. So we hustled. We didn't get as many questions in as we wanted to, but we sure hustled up to the mic.
Well, Kian had 2 questions. You had 2 questions. Andrew Chapados had 2 questions. David Menzies had 2 questions. And Drea had 1 question. I wish she would have had a follow-up. That's pretty good. That's a lot of questions.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a lot of answers. And, you know, getting back to Andrew Lawton, he really dug something out of Derek Sloan that I didn't know. You know, you don't hear a lot of new things all the time at these sorts of debates. They're very well rehearsed. The candidates' answers are very well rehearsed. But I did not know that Derek Sloan is in support of supply management. But somehow Andrew Lawton got that out of him, which I think might cause a lot of Albertans to look a little differently at Derek Sloan.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me. That was a surprise to me, too. Well, I thought it was a great evening, and I enjoyed watching it. I think both candidates did well. I mean, it exposed some weaknesses, but Andrew, he didn't gotcha them, he didn't shame them, he didn't badger them. There was 1 or 2 moments I wish he would have pounced a little bit, but he didn't do that. That's why I made the analogy with Andrew Neil, and for those who don't know him, I encourage you to Google him. I've been asking the other rebels the same question. Can you give me any notes or news from inside? Because I came to the event just to say hi. I said hi to Andrew. I said hi to some other folks. I met some young guys there. Let me get their names here. Greg from Diverge Media. I met him and his brother. That was nice. I didn't meet some of the others, like I think there's some French-Canadian guys there. Samuel from Dominion Media, excuse me. Did you meet anyone there that you thought, oh, I didn't know you existed? Who are you? What's up? Was there anyone there that was sort of an eye-opener to you?
Yeah, there's quite a few here. There was somebody here from Breitbart. Which
oh, that's right. Who was that?
That's Chris Tomlinson.
Oh, he's great. Yeah. That's great that he was there.
Yeah, he came. You know, it was a very young crowd. Actually, I'm embarrassed to say that David Menzies and I are probably the 2 oldest people in the room. And I think that it's a great future for independent journalism, that so many young people see journalism as a vehicle to their future, but they see, more importantly, independent journalism. They don't see the CBC as the answer to their prayers and their future and their career in journalism. They realize that we've got the internet and you can grind it out on your own and make a name for yourself. So the youth of the crowd was nice to see.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I got 1 card and I took notes of some of the names. Someone sent me some names, so I'm going to check some of them out and subscribe to them. And if they've got some pay service, I can chip them $10 a month, no big deal. It's the least I can do. If there's someone who wants to follow the independent path, it's not an easy path. So I got some digging to do and some research to do and some new friends that we've met tonight. Well, Sheila, thank you, and Drea, for making the very long journey, and Kian too, all the way from the west to here. And I'm glad all 3 of you travelers had a chance to put your questions. Is there anything else you want to say, or should we? I've got some super chats I'm going to get to. Last word to you, and is there anyone else there we should talk to, or should we sign off down there? Who's going to wrap it up? Sorry? Got it. So last word to you, Sheila, and then we'll call it quits for the Sheraton connection, and I'll just read the super chats.
Sure. I just want to thank everybody who's super chatting with you tonight, because these airline trips for us to do this kind of work. It's not cheap. It's not easy. We don't stay in glamorous hotels, but that's where your support goes to, is to making sure that we are in these places asking the questions that people want answers.
Thanks very much. That's a nice way to end it. Okay, we'll see you later, Sheila. All right, there you have it. Sheila Gunn-Reid, our chief reporter. It's true. I mean, we actually use that website called Hotwire, which gives you a cheap hotel. In fact, they show you the general area of the hotel and the number of stars it has, but they give you a price, and you have to accept it without seeing what hotel it is, because that allows them to sell it for cheaper. And so that's how we bought hotels for our team. Because we got to save the money, because we're not on the Trudeau payroll like so many of our competitors. So let's read some super chats. Thank you for your patience. So many super chats. So let me catch up. Oh, I hear my ear. If Andrew Lawton is available, I'd love to say hi. He's probably, he got an adrenaline rush and wants to drink a glass of water because he's been talking for 2 hours. But if he has 5-10 minutes for us, I'd love to talk to Andrew. It would be great. I want to congratulate him because he's done such a great job. Okie dokie. So do you remember which was the... I want to catch up on the Super Chats, because Sheila's right. The Super Chats are an important source of revenue for us because we get 70% of them. Okay, I see El Chepacabra, Sean A8. Brooksy 84, $70. That is amazing. Thank you very much. Hi, Ezra. I would love to hear some of the candidates' take about the Liberal gun grab, which I have been considerably affected by, and the public investigation of the Nova Scotia shooting. Stay safe, everyone. Those are interesting questions, and I don't really think those came up in either the interviews or the scrum afterwards. I think we asked a gun question in the last debate, but not in this one. Rager92, $5. Do you think Derek Sloan will bring the Conservative Party? Oh, did I hear Andrew's ready? Is that what he said? Okay, I'll come back to the Super Chats in a minute. We've got the star of the evening, Andrew Lawton. Andrew, I was just saying that I have not seen a finer interview of two candidates in memory. You were well briefed, friendly, but you held them to account. That was the most impressive act of journalism I've seen that wasn't being on the Rebel. I have to stand up for our team. No, congratulations to you, my friend. I think you won the night.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you, Ezra. And I can say, being a talk radio guy, that my whole MO is typically to roll with the punches. And today, as you well know, we were planning on a different event and had to call an audible and make the best of it. And I'm glad that you had such kind words to say. It's truly appreciated. And may I say, we appreciated all of the independent press gallery members who are working at Rebel News, who not only joined the gallery, but also came out here to cover it.
Well, I mean, it was great to be invited because we all signed up and there was a ton of new faces. I didn't even know so many of the journalists who were there. I didn't know there were so many independent journalists in Canada. I think you guys said you had 50 people sign up or something, or maybe even more?
Yeah, and that's just in the first couple of weeks here. And there were, certainly people that applied that we knew and had worked with and talked to in the past, but certainly it was great to see all of the names of people that I didn't know. And good to know that the Independent Press Gallery, which exists to give a voice to independent media, has actually brought some people out of the woodwork and given them an opportunity. And I was speaking with one person earlier who they said, they hadn't even bothered or wouldn't even bother trying with some of these other events because they know that they would go down the same road that we were, which is being banned. But this event actually gave them an opportunity to be journalists. And you shouldn't need that to be handed to you on a platter in Canada, but with how the way the establishment treats independent media, that's sadly the situation.
Yeah, that guy Samuel from Dominion Media and Greg from Diverge Media, and even Daniel Boardman, even though I thought his question was a little odd, and the post-millennial guys were there. I really enjoyed hearing from them. And I was just saying to Sheila, the questions that were asked, and I took notes on all of them, they were better questions, more interesting, that's for sure, than what you have at the standard media party event. Just real people talk about, is TikTok going to be banned? Real people say, are vaccines going to be made mandatory? Real people say, hey, how come we don't have relations with Taiwan? I thought you were the star of the evening. I thought you actually brought out the best in both candidates and exposed some flaws that I didn't know about. But actually, the grassroots membership of the Independent Press Gallery, they did a heck of a job too. I think this is a great, I want to just tell you this, because I know you've been thinking about, you put your heart into this. Sheila just said to me, she said, if you didn't know that the plans were changed, you wouldn't have detected it, because it was so smooth. It was like you were planning for these fireside chats the whole time. Didn't miss a beat. It was great. And you know what? I got to be candid. It was probably better than a debate. I mean, I hate the fact that Peter MacKay chickened out.
From you, Ezra. And let me just say as well that one of the things I love the most about the scrums, apart from just independent journalists being able to be there, is that all of the questions were different. I don't know if you watched the scrums of the official French debate or English debate that the Conservative Party held, but the questions, and True North did an analysis of this, about 50% of them were about abortion one night, and I think it was 40 to 45% were about systemic racism the other night. And I'm of the mind that you may not agree with the answer you get, but once you get the answer, you can move on. And I thought it was great that in the scrum, there was such a variety among the questions and by extension among the answers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, listen, I just wanted to tell you, I thought it was outstanding. The production quality was great. Everything about it was good. I think that, I mean, if Leslie Lewis was sick, then obviously she can't come. I think Peter MacKay, by not coming, has shown us a little bit of who he is. So maybe, in fact, we did learn about Peter MacKay tonight. And I could hear in Candace's voice a deep disappointment because she had been working so hard with you at the first event. It's like your big ta-da introduction to the world, and that loser throws such a lame excuse for not coming. But I also thought that she overtalked it because, you know what? The event was a huge hit. And in a way, we all know who Peter MacKay is now. But I just want to congratulate you. Must be exhausted preparing so much and then high intensity for 2 hours like that. Is there one question you would have asked them if you had a little more time? I mean, you really managed it well, but time was limited, and even in the Q&A was limited. Is there something that, or maybe you don't want to give away your super questions because you'll have another round one day, but was there something you thought if you had another few minutes you would have gone a little deeper on?
Yeah, with Erin O'Toole, one of the things that I wanted to ask about, and we ran out of time, was Quebec. He's got a Quebec-specific platform, and he doesn't have that for any other province. So what is it that he's expecting to gain? Is it that he believes it? Is it that he thinks that's the path to gaining inroads in Quebec as a Conservative? That was one thing that would have been interesting, and certainly a flip on the way the mainstream media typically asks about Quebec, which is, how much money are you going to give? How much are you going to let them do this and that? And with Derek Sloan, I would have loved to have gotten into immigration. He's the only candidate that's pushing for not just a pause, but a reduction in immigration. And unpacking a little bit more of that, I think, would have been nice to do. And look, 35 minutes at the beginning, you think sounds like a long time. And then once you get up there, you think this is great. I've got plenty of time. We can cover everything. And then you blink and you've got 2 or 3 minutes left and you have to wind things down. But you know what? I think that both of the candidates showed an interest in talking to independent media. So the fact that I wasn't able to ask the questions tonight doesn't make me sad, because I would actually love for independent media to reach out and do interviews with them and get answers to those questions and others. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. It's not about us. It's not about me. It's really about a voice for independent journalists.
Well, and what a public service you and Candace have done. And we were some of the first, but someone was first, we weren't the first, but we were like in the first 5 people who applied, and we're so proud to be members of the Independent Press Gallery. We're constantly battling the bottlenecks. Even in Alberta, we were denied access to the press gallery out there. Hopefully you guys will have recognition in provinces too. I think that's coming. You guys.
Well, I got, like, for the first time in my life, a real approved accredited press pass. So when Justin Trudeau tries to throw me off the next bus, this is going to be what I whip out. And let's hope by then that the Independent Press Gallery will be a legitimate enough force that's recognized by the mainstream media that means something. And if it doesn't, that the culture will have shifted enough that everyone is seeing the true colors of those who don't want to speak to independent journalists. Yeah,
I think that what the judgment of the legacy media is should not carry the day. You are a legit press gallery. You proved that tonight. I'm going to let you go because I can imagine you're pooped from such an energetic and successful day. Please pass on my congratulations to the rest of your team, including Candace, who has championed this idea. And I met some other folks on your team, like Phil, who I'd never met before. So I know it was a big team effort there tonight. So congrats, my friend. Job well done.
Thank you so much.
All right, there you have it. One of our favorite guys, Andrew Lawton, just hitting new heights today. I had the pleasure of accompanying Andrew to London, where he came for some of Tommy Robinson's trials, you might recall. So he certainly lives it when he talks about freedom of speech. All right, well, it's 9:40, and we've been here for about 3 hours. I want to say special thank you to Justin, who's been holding the fort here in the control room. And down at the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Toronto, we had a big team. I'm going from memory here, but I think I saw Alex and Efron and Mocha and Eitan and Margaret on the behind-the-scenes side, and then you've already seen our on-air talent. I hope I haven't missed anybody. I'm sorry if I have, but they've been working very hard tonight. And I want to say thanks to our super chatters, people who give us dough, because YouTube takes 30%, which is a big commission, but we get the rest. I'm going to clear those up. It's 9:40 Eastern right now. Let's go through them. Let's go through them. Yeah, that was nice to talk to Andrew for a second there. Now, where were we? We just talked about the gun grab. Rager 992, $5. Do you think Derek Sloan will bring the Conservative Party back to the real conservative ideals? Well, he very clearly is a true conservative. In I mean, as Sheila pointed out, it was a little wobbly on dairy cartels. But I think on every other answer, he's pretty rock solid conservative, wasn't he? Kelly May, $7. Thank you, Kelly. Damon the Damas, $5. Peter MacKay is having an It's My Party and I'll Cry if I Want to campaign. Yeah, I'm not impressed with Peter MacKay. And you know what? He's probably not impressed with me and my kind. We're not his kind, dear, you know. He thinks he can win. That's strange. He's not taking that approach would be, okay, I'm a red Tory, you're a blue Tory. Put that aside, we got to win. We're in a naturally center-left country if we don't allow people who are 60% conservative to be in the party. If you have to be 80% conservative to be a conservative, we're going to lose. That's a compelling argument. At least it's an argument. Pouting and canceling at the last minute like a child who didn't do his homework, that's not even a grown-up thing to do. It's not even respectful. John Canadian, $7. Ezra, please tell us when people who bought the book from ChinaVirusBook.com can expect them in the mail. I left a message and an email for our printer yesterday because I am curious about that. And let me follow up, and I should have you an answer tomorrow. I'm very grateful for your question. I was distracted yesterday and today by the Alberta Press Gallery thing, but let me get you an answer tomorrow. I'll email you. I'll email everybody who got the book. Daviator, $5. The Rebel and Derek Sloan are number one. Thank you. Andrew Kozak, $5. How many more scandals do you think Trudeau has up his sleeve? Or will the current one sink him? Oh, he's not sinkable. He's not sinkable. And I know they said that about the Titanic too. But the Liberal Party will never abandon him because they know they're nothing without him. And the Media Party will never abandon him because they love him too much. They'll forgive him, the old lug. They'll throw someone else under the bus, like the Kielburgers. John St. Aubin, $5. What do they have on Pierre? Why did Pierre black out? He asked the hard questions. Oh, don't get me started. Pierre Poilievre would just be killing it right now. He's so smart and tough and principled and a great communicator. I think he speaks Francais. There must be some reason he didn't run that's not apparent. And by the way, he started to run before he backed out. I don't know why. I'm sad. Wolfcat Wildcats, what are we going to do with our Conservative Party? Not sure we can trust them. Well, can I be very honest, just you and me? You can't trust any politician of any stripe. Take it from the good book. Put not your trust in princes. You got to work with them, but don't actually trust a politician. That won't work out well. Retired American Patriot, $5 US. What are your thoughts on the media CEOs testifying before Congress on media biases? If you're talking about the social media visit to Congress, I think that's what you're talking about. I haven't had a chance to watch the tape. I did talk today with Alan Bokhari, senior tech correspondent for Breitbart.com, about the incredible censorship of the America's Frontline Doctors video. So I've dug into that. I have not had a chance to review the footage of the social media companies. Sean Vision, $10. Prior to the election, Liberals and Soros-funded groups pushed to repeal Canada's blasphemy laws and those around the world. After Canada's repealed, the effort around the world stopped. What happened? To repeal the blasphemy laws? I didn't think we had blasphemy laws. And And I thought blasphemy laws were actually coming back to be used against, quote, Islamophobia. So I don't know what you're referring to there. Oh, you know what? We did have an old law about blasphemy in the criminal code that was likely no longer effective because it would probably contradict Section 2B of the Charter of Rights. So maybe that's what you're talking about. I just don't know what you mean. Kurt Koenig, $5. MacKay is such a beta male. He does not get his name capitalized. Well, you know, why not just own who you are? There are red Tories. Sometimes they win. I think mostly liberals say, well, if I want a liberal, I'll get the real thing. But there is an argument for being a red Tory. Saying you'll be there and canceling at the last moment is not an argument. Sean Ranger, $5, thank you. Jack Krauser, $7. If Sloan wins, we may have to dump the PPC. All their merch is made in China. Yeah, it's tough to find merch that's not made in China, let me tell you. Craig McDonald, $2.79. Sloan should be the leader of Wexit if he loses this. What's his riding? He's from Ontario, right? So I don't think that's going to work. Sean Vision, $10. Why is Roxon Road the route illegal border crossers use rather than any other road or field that crosses the U.S.-Canada border and is also not an official point of entry? I don't know. Maybe because it's in New York, so New York has a lot of international airports, JFK, etc. And there's a whole trafficking operation. They just know it works there. And New York is a big state, and getting in Quebec, and it just is convenient. I don't know how it started, but it's well worn now. If the first 60,000 people get through, why would you start a different route? You know that you have a 100% chance of getting through like the previous 60,000 people. Danielle Latondre, $20. Ezra, your favorite Quebecer here. In regards to your daily show, have you tried inviting some conservative Quebecers like Gérard Deltel, Eric Duhem, or even Mario Dumont? You know, we have Eric Duhem on from time to time. I really like the guy. I've known him for more than 20 years, and I really like him. Just today I was looking at Andre Arthur, the former MP and radio host. I was thinking, you know, I should reach out to him. I don't know what his English skills are, but I like him. And I follow him on Twitter, and I sometimes translate his tweets from Francais into English. So yes, I was saying the other day, I would like to find someone in Quebec who's bilingual French and English. But I have to be careful. I mean, I just love hiring people, hire. But you got to be able to pay the bills, right? Richard Nymek, $20. Thank you, Richard. Ted Joseph, $25. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Ted. Whole team was out tonight, weren't they? Fraser McBurney, hi, Fraser, $12. Just a little to help out with expenses. Once again, the Rebel knocks out of the park. We held a little get-together to protest the wearing of masks in Hamilton. We'll have an update on maskexemption.ca. Let's see, it's Wednesday night. I think we got that tomorrow night, right? Yeah, tomorrow. We got a lawyer named Michael Swanberg, who we have asked to do a chart with every single mask bylaw in Canada, what the exemptions are. So hopefully we'll have that. So I received the chart, and I think he's scheduled to come on. So watch the show tomorrow night. Frank Dano, $5. How about giving Drea a real Rebel microphone, Ezra? Do we have any news on that? Are we sending some to her? Justin says he thinks that she has it, and he'll give her a call tomorrow. Yeah, so I didn't even notice that, but let's get her one. And it's just usually the mic flash or something. Is that what we're talking about? So Justin says we think that she has one. C. Pa, $20. I wish there could be a candidate that would stay and talk like Trump. He talks till reporters are exhausted. Isn't that the truth? He loves the banter. And you know what? Can I say the obvious? He calls on Jim Acosta. So he chooses to take questions from his antagonists. He chooses it. How different that is from our politicians, from most politicians. Rager 992, $5. Do you think Canada should use the American vaccine? Well, okay, can I ask you a question? Do you know how many people died in Canada last year from the flu and pneumonia? I do. Well, the latest stats are every year is between 6,500 and 8,500, rough numbers. So how many people have died in Canada from the virus? Do you know? I know. It's just under 9,000. So it's an average death toll of the flu, and I'm not happy that anyone's dying. I just saw the stats in Quebec. We did a show on the other day. Average age of the death toll from the virus in British Columbia, 85 years old. By the way, the average male in BC doesn't even live to 85. What's the youngest person who passed away in BC? Again, they got very good stats, 47. So no one under 47 has died. Oldest person who died was 103. Average age was 85. I'm not happy that anyone's died. But you're going to give a new, untested vaccine, probably made in China. You're going to jab it in the arm of 37 million people because, 180 people in BC died? I'm just using BC. You know how many people died in BC this year alone from opioids? Triple the number. Okay? So, yeah, I'm not thrilled with the vaccine. Hillary Waugh, $5 with 2 candidates missing. They should have increased the questions to 20 minutes for the 2 who were there. Aaron, too long-winded with his answers. Well, I'm not going to quarrel with their revision of things on the fly because I think they had a great success. CPAS, $10. Your questions from the independent media are the questions I do ask and talk about all the time. CBC's fake news. Thank you again, Rebel Team. Love from Saskatchewan. Well, that's nice of you. I thought they were good questions. I thought the Daniel Boardman question was weird about the lawsuit. It was weird. But everything else was interesting. Carly Schaefer, $10. So happy to have a news group like you guys. I love seeing people fight for our rights and for Canadians. Thank you. Well, thank you for saying that. You know, we do reporting. We do commentary. And we're activists, too. You know. We fight the fights. CPAS, $5. Sheila Gunn Reid, not baling hay in this sunshine here in the West to bring us the other side of the story. Thank you. Well, Sheila's the best. And she schlepped all the way in from Edmonton to Toronto for tonight. So I'm so glad. I was glad to see her. MVP, $5. Australian, I think. Congratulations on a fantastic coverage. Well, thank you. You know, I got to tell you, can I tell you a secret? For the first 2 hours, I just sat there. I really didn't say anything, so thank you. I had some drinks and snacks here. But yeah, we did have good coverage afterwards. I'm just saying that for the first 2 hours, my job was just sit here and not get up to go to the bathroom. Mike, $5.19, $20. Thank you, Rebel, for your journalists and to Rebel supporters. Canada, Croatia, love. Well, thanks. I was so happy to see our team. I went down. I mean, it took 45 minutes to get from our office to the Sheraton. I was there for like 20 minutes. And then it took 45 minutes to get back. You're thinking, Ezra, why did you do that? Well, I wanted to see everybody. I wanted to see the whole team who came in. And especially Drea, who came in all the way from Vancouver. That's a 5-hour flight and a 5-hour flight back. And they have to stay the night. So that's basically 24 hours. But I think Drea was pretty excited to be part of the team. It sure seemed that way. Bobby Sharks, $5. Thanks for all your hard work. Good night, Ezra. Good night. Thank you, Bobby. Lamont Boucherville, $10. Sad MacKay didn't show up today. I voted Peter because he will increase military spending, or at least that's what he's promising, even though he was defense minister for 10 years. Well, that's the thing. We hear all these guys talking tough on things right now. Where were they when they were in power? Erin O'Toole didn't vote to reduce CBC funding then, did he? John Canadian, $7. Thanks for reading my super chat, Ezra. I fell asleep at the start, but we'll watch the replay. Okay, fair enough. It wasn't boring. I was just really tired. Rebel rocks. I feel you, brother. I hear you. No, you don't need to explain. I didn't even know you were sleeping until you told me. So you didn't have to feel defensive about it, because I wouldn't have known. Did we catch up on all the super chats? Did we have them all? A couple more. Okay, let me just... Okay, I think maybe we had them all. All right, well, you know what? I had a good night, and partly because I saw my friends. You know, we see the team on, every day we have 2 staff meetings, one at 10 a.m. and one at 5 p.m. And we meet in the boardroom, but we also have a big TV, and people join by Skype, so we have like everyone's little face there. And so we have about 5 or 6 people from afar. So to have those friends that we see twice a day on the big screen come in person, it's really fun. I think so. And I mean, listen, they're the ones who have to sit in the plane for so long, but I think they sort of like coming here, and we're always glad to see them. So I thank you for your kind words for our whole team. CPAS $2. I'm just giving so you can't leave. Well, I am going to leave because it's 9:54, and I think it's time to go. But I had a good time, thanks to the whole Rebel team behind the scenes who worked so hard, including Mike, who made the backdrop, which I always love, our fancy event backdrops. Yeah, big team effort, and of course, a big thanks to the team to the Independent Press Gallery, including Candace and Andrew, and the True North team who helped put on the event tonight. A10 of our team helped out too, so a big effort, but a big payoff. I know they're disappointed that 2 of the candidates backed out, but would you agree with me that it was a great night? It was a success by all measures. Andrew really shone like a star. But really the hero of the night, if I may say, I mean, Andrew won the debate, so to speak. But look at that, the independent press gallery. It's a real thing. Show me the Trudeau-Justin Trudeau bailout media debate, huh? They're all coming up with excuses. They would never have an event with a debate because they don't give any oxygen or airtime to conservatives. And if they did, it would be a debate about abortion, gay rights, and why aren't you doing more for climate change? You know, if the media party had a debate like this, those would be the only topics allowed in conversation. And it would be interruptions, constant interruptions, and then when it was over, Rosie Barton and the CBC would sue everybody. Oh, that actually happened, that's right. All right, my friends, it's 9:55 Eastern, 7:55 in Alberta, 6:55 in beautiful British Columbia. Until tomorrow, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.